Okay.
I just mean I'm gonna check it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Where do you want the audio pulling from the webcam?
Somebody's enjoying it.
There you go.
I think so. No, I'll do the. Well, that was on special. Oh, basically, weeks ago. So I bought them.
Because I got the river up from the basement.
You guys are gonna be standing over there.
Yeah, you want me to go stand over there so you
Sure,
can set it
reverse.
up properly? Yeah, that's what I said was weird. It shouldn't be doing that. I don't know why it's doing that.
Oh well, as long as the person who's doing this knows, it's fine.
It's just gonna be odd because all the text is gonna be backwards.
Oh yeah. That's weird.
Is that actually anything?
Are you on committee for this?
No response.
Are you on committee for this?
Okay, well, I'm trying to. I was just checking the others.
But it's backwards.
Not on here. It's the right one.
Okay, awesome. Good. Very good.
Okay.
It's working. Everything's working. It only looks backwards on the screen. I was like, I've never had this trouble before. I don't know what's going on.
Fire out there. Towards me. Yeah. They could. The idea was that. They could. The idea
Yeah, it's the front there. So I just needed it in your house. So it's easier.
I don't know.
it shouldn't bother yourself. But all of that will be
It's hard to say without using it. Do you think the mic will be too overpowering?
Because I was just thinking I could hear Joanne really clear
from
from there.
The shelves were there.
I'm just thinking, do you think it'll be too much?
Someone want to test it?
And then John really clear. Yeah, the shelves were there. Hello? Hello?
Sorry.
Test.
It's very clear on here.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Seems like the mic's not making much of a difference. Wait,
That's the mic.
yeah, it's creating a bit of a,
Back, like an echo.
yeah.
I'll try this.
So it's probably better to just not have the mic. Unless you guys think we need it. But I think my opinion would be that we do not.
We don't want that echo. That's like
Yeah, we
weird.
need it for
See the audience who works in the audience if they're like a seat for someone's talking.
yeah, so everyone's on.
Hello, Todd. Tripping me out.
I'm trying to figure out what happened last week. Only like,
Freeze almost 4 months. Getting ready for some teeth. Yeah. She's from Gore.
so the main one was from, yeah, but I don't know what acting was from, what her name was.
I know, that sounds really timid at the first one, and then I got pretty confident with the Monday. Okay, I got it. I just have to post them now on that couple places.
So do I look at the camera or no?
You can choose, you can treat it like another person, that's what I do. So you look at it sometimes, and you look around the room, you look at other people's side, and you listen to the camera, so you're pre-framing them in like they're part of it. But if you just stare at the camera, it doesn't feel, it feels weird to them too. And it also feels weird. Yeah, so that's what I do. It's just a person. So I'm 29. You're happy now? I would have liked it. Anyway, it's not, I think it's just how it
That's John Anderson.
Yeah, we were talking about coffee. Oh, what's tomorrow? Oh, yeah, that's what I have.
I just want that. It's not my fault.
I already ate my squash. I didn't have garlic on it. It was butter. It was so sweet.
Yeah.
It was like,
Don't worry, my sweet
and I was
potato.
only eat part of it, but I ate the whole thing.
Oh, no, it's fine, it just, it takes time for me to do this too, so I have to do what I
It's
have.
real Indian food.
Yeah.
That's what I was told when I was a kid.
It's a root
I
fruit,
was a real Indian.
it's a root fruit,
All food I ate.
like anything like brown.
I'm getting that.
Did you hear those voices? Yeah.
She's like, you're talking to me. And then she went away. Just a slight eyebrow.
Do you guys remember what hot sticks are? 24 hours of reality at climate.
You want me to look it up?
Yeah, let's see.
Hello?
Monique Katie, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
She said she can have it. She's 30.
Okay.
And like 1 minute away.
We're especially a little bit later, we're starting anyway, so we're gonna, yeah.
Because I was like, my boyfriend. Every time I turn around,
Yeah, she's starting.
yes, she is. I bet she is. I didn't even bring my phone with me. I only bring my phone if I was on the way down.
Some people are just texting people, some people are calling people. I'm a texting person and nursing a calling person. So I text him information and then he calls me and asks me the same question I just texted in the information. So I was like, yeah. Yeah, that's all right. I just wanted to know.
We're all good. We're good to go.
Like maybe he's changing.
She's like, I can't even step one anymore. He still is. So we're waiting there for Joss's story. Like stressful.
It is on live now, like so people can watch it.
Probably doesn't want to.
Oh, I'm nice. And then they also be close.
Oh, that's your hand. Oh, you found a lot of really
I know, it's just kind of,
He just posted an hour ago from Niagara, so.
yeah. Fair enough. That's such a long way for them to, well, come back, so I guess we can.
do we need to move them? We need to.
I don't know, what did she do? I think you have any issues with the fire. Oh, starting.
Oh. It's really snowy out.
It was raining. Yeah.
There's gonna be a break. Yeah, you could do a question then.
I know we can help them.
Are we gonna get started again?
Since we can't. I texted Gore.
It's running late, is that?
I still don't know.
Nice.
So now that you're saying that, what else?
It also might have been longer.
Yeah.
Now we're here.
I'm thinking, yeah, this is-
We know we have the truck.
I know we have a park tomorrow.
There's too much going on. We'll do that too, for sure.
Yeah, there's supposed to be.
Could be just so random and some other.
Yeah.
Could be that.
Okay, my turn to be the judge. Okay. You're gonna take next. Hello.
Yeah, is it? Yeah, there's quite a few of our people are here.
Climate change, I tell you.
I was shocked when they called her. She had called something. That's one thing. The car, you know, because I drove it.
I just texted you, to see if you look where he's at.
Gonna choose this job.
Who gets the door?
Up to 6:30, Friday, Sunday.
We don't have a title sign. We don't have a title sign for anything. No, this is. I'll get the this one.
Yeah, just walk around.
Yeah,
You get one? Yeah, going down. Okay. You ready to wrap it up?
I'll tell you more.
That's right. Just relax and it goes in the ring.
Are we gonna wait for everyone else or just start? Yeah, okay. So, my name is Jossie for those of you that don't know me, I'm JossAnn Russell-Taylor. I work at the Adult Learning Center here in Neyaashiinigmiing. We're partnering tonight with the Bagida'waad Alliance. It's a newly formed for-profit group that's started here in Neyaashiinigmiing. To open, I'm going to ask Joanne Keeshig to come up, and we're going to open in a traditional midday. Joanne's one of our elders in the community, and I've asked her to open us up in a good way. So hopefully,
so first we're going to smudge. This is going to help us get ready and do what it is that we need to do. Bonjour, Miigwech, Miigwech, Nishnikas, Maigan, and Dodan, Nisimai, Bondishinville. I was offered tobacco to do this opening. This, I understand, this 24-hour event. This watch party is to talk about climate change and to be able to talk about this climate change from an Anishinaabe perspective. As Indigenous people, we know what that means to us. And so just wanting to bring everyone's thoughts together to talk about what's impacting our mother, Miigwech, all of the things that we as human beings have participated in the unraveling of our mother, to be able to talk about her lifeblood, her water, to be able to talk about her physical being, her body, those trees, those animals, wherever life comes from her. We need to be able to talk about how that's impacted our actions as human beings, what it's done, continues to do. And I heard something just recently, and why we're doing it in this way is that Creator, Gajan in the beginning of our creation time, loved Anishinaabe, Miigwech, so much. Because Miigwech turned around 4 times before leaving Creator's side, asking, do you really want me to go? So we have a connection to our Creator that is unique. And it's from that perspective that we need to be able to pursue this conversation. So I'm asking Gajan to listen to us, to help all of us, Nadamal, Shin, Kinawea, to be able to take this time out to speak on behalf of our mother, to look at those things that science is now bearing up, the stories that our people have always talked about. We're going to be able to see that. We used to think that they were, fairy tales at one point, but we know that that's not true. We know that that is the truth, and we are seeing that, the evident truth of what Creator gave to us. We're also told that whatever it is that we need in our lifetime is already here. We just need to be able to see it, to hear it, to feel it, and to act on it. So I'm going to use those few words I also wanted to be able to lift up the water, because I know that there's going to be other people coming and speaking, and to be able to lift up that water in a good way, to bring blessings upon whoever drinks that, and to be able to send it out to our mother and to all of creation, to be able to have that drink with us, and support the work that we're doing here as Anishinaabe people, as a human being, to be able to do the work, to be able to talk the good talk, and to bring that truth to light so that people all over will be able to hear and to see and to recognize the truth. Joanne Keeshig, Joanne Keeshig, oh, I can't get out. I'll just come and follow you.
So she's just gonna be like. I don't have to feel like go with that.
I'm watching you.
Yeah, more people talk to them. It's okay. So it's been intense.
Next, we're gonna have Karina, Sarah, and Brandy Barr. They're gonna present climate change presentation.
Our slides are gone. We'll
Yeah, I know,
do
just
it
one
in a second.
I just wanted to make sure that you could see the color, so it's fine.
So I'm Karina and this is Brandy, and we were both trained by Al Gore through the Climate Reality Project to be able to give his climate change presentation. So we're going to be giving that today. So this is me, my lovely son, Cregan. Yes, photo by Brandy. So I'll be doing the science overview just to make sure that everybody is at the same basic climate science point, and I'm sure John, you'd be able to chime in more. He's an actual climate scientist. I'm just a, lay person trying to explain it. But I did go around giving quite a few of these presentations, so hopefully it's all good because I've told quite a few people this information. But so this is just a photo of the Earth's atmosphere, so you can get an idea of how small it is. And in this atmosphere, you have all of what are called greenhouse gases. So those include carbon dioxide, they include methane, they include a huge variety of greenhouse gases, but predominantly what we were taught to talk about by Mr. Gore was carbon dioxide. And that's because when it goes up into the atmosphere, it actually stays up there for a very long time. So it may not be as high of a concentration, but it actually stays there for hundreds of years. So the Earth's atmosphere is what makes it so that Earth is a nice habitable planet for us to live in. So you can see here that this is just a comparison of Earth's atmosphere to places like Venus or Mercury. And they may be closer to the sun, but like Venus also has a much thicker atmosphere. So you can see the temperature difference up here in Celsius. And Mercury, even though it's closer to the sun, is actually less hot than Venus because of the size of the atmosphere. You can see Mercury just has a thin little atmosphere around it. The only problem with transitions in slides is waiting. But you can see it's only 167 degrees Celsius on average, as opposed to Venus, which is upwards of 450. This is just explaining generally the natural carbon cycle. So you have things like fires and decomposition. Those put carbon up into the atmosphere. And then things are considered to be carbon sinks that bring it back down. So things like photosynthesis, plants growing. The phytoplankton in water also helps bring that carbon back down. And then that brings it into the sediment. Now, this is the impact of humans and their activity on that carbon cycle. So if you notice here, we're doing all these things to erode the sinks, so we're getting rid of those things that normally bring the carbon back down. So like by destroying wetlands, through things like that. But we're also putting a huge amount more up into the atmosphere through things like fossil fuel production, the burning of forests, deforestation, and methane from agriculture. So all of those things both contribute to it, and we're getting rid of those sinks that normally help bring it back down. So basically the way that the atmosphere normally works is that the radiation comes from the sun and it warms the earth, and then a certain amount of that is radiated back up, and the atmosphere traps a certain amount of those infrared waves and brings them back down again. But sorry, we're getting excited. So the thing is, though, as that atmosphere gets thicker, more of those waves are trapped and come back down. So that's basically how it ends up warming the Earth, is that more of those come back down and warm the Earth even more when the atmosphere gets thicker with more greenhouse gases. So scientists used to say, like, we're loading the dice. So we're changing the odds of having these extreme weather events by having more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But we find that now that they're saying that we're painting more dots on the dice. So we're actually making it that there can be even more extreme weather events than they thought that we could possibly have before. So we're not only changing the odds, but we're also increasing the severity of those weather events. So big storms are becoming both more frequent and bigger. And Brandy's going to talk a little bit more about this because she's going to be giving more of the local perspective in a moment. But here's a quick linkage between the climate crisis and increased frequency and severity of these extreme weather events. So as the CO2, which is the other word for that carbon dioxide that we talked about, as it increases, you can see that the temperature also increases. And consequently, when the temperatures increase, the oceans also evaporate more moisture into the sky. So I'm just going to explain a little bit more about how that goes on. This is just, again, showing that change in annual global temperature. You can see the sharp increase. It's okay. And then you can see the increase in heavy precipitation days that goes with that. So now I'm going to explain how that happens in the hydrological cycle. Basically, you have your evaporation goes to your precipitation, so it comes back, goes up, comes back down, right? And then it goes back to the sea, comes up, goes back down. But warmer air can actually hold a lot more water vapor, so it can hold more of that water up. So with each additional degree Celsius that the world's temperature increases, the atmosphere's capacity to hold that water actually increases by 7%. And as you can see from this slide, there's already 4% more water vapor over the oceans than there was only 30 years ago. So that's a significant increase. And that means that your storms actually get more intense, which also causes more floods because all that water is coming down at once as opposed to just being spread out little bits. And then it intensifies that cycle even more as the temperatures increase. And interestingly, when that water is evaporated, it actually also is pulling more water out of the land, so it leads to both flooding and droughts, which a lot of people seem to think with climate change that you can't have both, but they actually end up both happening. So one of the ways that it was explained to us is that it's like a big bathtub in the sky. So like basically you keep filling that up with the water, right? And as the temperatures increase, that bathtub can be filled even fuller. But the thing is that when a downpour happens, it can pull water from up to 1 kilometer away. So it's like pulling the plug out of a bathtub. It pulls all that water in from the whole surrounding area. So that's part of how it gets more intense, is that the atmosphere is holding all of that extra water vapor, and that whole extra area is dumping it down in one spot. The other thing that's happening with climate change that we wanted to show you briefly in this science overview is the increase in species loss. So you can see how many more species we've lost recently as opposed to in the last 162,000 years. And so to conclude my part, every National Academy of Science in the world confirms that humans are causing this global warming that's happening. As you can see from this slide, there's none that reject that we are causing this problem. So everybody is, yes, that's it, very good. So everybody is, in conclusion, is on the same page. And we just wanted to give that little overview of the science so that everybody has a good jumping off point for seeing the presentation by Mr. Gore in the hour later on, and also for Brandy's presentation. So she's going to be giving a short talk on the local effects of climate change. So this is Brandy Farr. She was trained in 2015 to give the climate change presentation. I'll let you cross over. Not going to take up the stage too much. But I was trained in 2008 to be able to give a version of this presentation, and she was trained a little bit more recently in 2015 in Toronto. So, but we both received the same training, just she got a more updated version of it. So that was then hold the power. There you go. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandy and let her talk about the local effects.
So I'm from Southern First Nation. I did not grow up there, but I have been there for about 6 years now. And I have noticed differences over the years with how the climate change is affecting fishing, hunting, etc. So let's talk about farming and agriculture. I want to do this fast because we're kind of on the time crunch, and I do not, this isn't my favorite thing to do. Talking to people, a lot of people. So in July, actually, we've seen droughts happening. People seem to think, oh, these droughts are happening in different countries. Well, Canada, we're so rich with our water that it's not going to happen here, but that's not true. So in July of 2018, they have seen droughts happening near Ottawa. So the Ladue River Valley Conservation, they didn't get 100% capacity in the reservoirs, but they only reach 60% with collecting water and all that. So what that did is it caused problems for local farmers who rely on that to irrigate their crops. And not only did it happen in the summer, where people think it's summer, it's hot, okay, droughts happen. But it proceeded on to the fall of 2018, to the point where the Mississippi Conservation Authority had to tell people to be careful with the water use because it was so low. So this is, sorry, we got a little bit happy here too. So this is what happens basically. It's just a little look of what can happen if just the land doesn't get the nutrition it needs from the water and it dries out, it's just not usable. So by a study done by York University with the help of the Ministry of the Environment, concluded that we are, even though we're having droughts, we are seeing more precipitation. And the issue with that is it's increasing, but when it does downpour, it happens in floods. It comes all at once. So as you see here, this is Toronto in summer 2013. They experienced, actually I think I was there, yeah. I lived there in 2013. I remember this being all over the news, and it was such a big thing. You had people stuck in their cars, you had roads closed, people having to like just take all these different detours, and especially when it comes to infrastructure, it is damaging. So as much as droughts suck, getting too much rain at one time can be just as worse. So what's happening with temperature is that we are increasing, but it's not to the extreme of we're increasing right now this minute. It's developing naturally over time, but we're feeding so much pollution into the air that it's happening just at a rate that's not normal. So basically, we're seeing an annual of 3.6 Celsius increasing, and that really affects the environment over time. So as you see, warm days are increasing by 164%. I can tell you that because does anybody remember 2016, like the summer of 2016, that it was hell? I can remember that because they don't have air conditioning. So everything the weather does really affects like where I live, how comfortable I am, and yeah. So I lost my thought for a minute. So basically, farmers, when they go through these droughts, they're gonna have to do more irrigation. That pulls more water from a resource that's already depleting. And when that happens, produce, the prices get higher. So this isn't like, oh, it's not gonna affect us, boo-hoo dry weather. If we don't take action now, the produce we love locally will not be available. Also, I was told I need to talk about this because you guys love maple syrup, eh? So what's happening is the rate we're going at with climate change, and if you know anything about collecting maple syrup in the process, there's such a delicate balance between freezing and defrosting that when it's thrown into a loop, it's not going to be as productive. So if you notice by 2070, it's decreasing where it can be. It's just becoming like this little area where it's suitable to grow these maple sugar trees. Yeah, let's talk about hunting. We all love this. As Indigenous people, this is, I don't care if it's just to eat or if it's a sport, we love it, it's fun, but it's also such a great thing to do and to like hold that culture and hope that hunting is just like, it's not an extreme sport, it's just like a way of life and how we live. And if you want to protect that, you need to address climate change. You just can't think, oh, it's going to be all fine. Like, animals will always be here because that's not what happens. So this is the northern caribou. Right now, there's a study done from 1974 to 2014. And it was, I believe it was conducted by the World Wildlife Fund. So they found that the northern caribou is increasing drastically. So we used to have over 2 million caribou, and now it's down to 800,000 in less than a 3-decade mark. So it's disturbing. Stuff like this is not supposed to happen so quickly. So it really makes you think what is causing this, and not nature, not all nature, let me tell you that. So even some of the herds have like, that they studied also have been shrinking by more than like that, halfway mark. It's been 90% or more. And we can't see extinction of certain species. Again, I'm new at this. It's been a year since I talked to more than like 2 people at once. So, like I said, the World Wildlife Foundation did conduct a study. It's called the Living Planet Report, and they do it yearly. And they have found that Canada is susceptible to like global climate change, and that we are doubling at that rate, that we are experiencing it right now. And these are just some of the ways that it can affect us. So like I said, the planet, like our environment isn't meant for certain weather, and like when extremes happen, it's just not good. So yeah. They also did a report. This is a different one, I should have added more. But government organizations are now acknowledging us as a group and what we can do to help climate change, and just to, our insights. So we were mentioned in we were mentioned in a proposal. I'm blanking on the name, but in this proposal done by the Ministry of the Environment, they concluded that they wanted to partner with traditional tribes around the St. Clair River to help clean it up, and that they would put funding towards that. So we do have the means to develop relationships and make sure, we can make a difference. Just not from grassroots, but up. So if I'm talking too much. So let's talk about the real thing. As I'm a member of the Bagida'waad Alliance, the fishing is really important, especially the water. My brother was a hunter and fisher, and he was avid about it. I would have to sit through hours of his conversations. So this is kind of near and dear. I also worked for Saugeen at the beach, and so I was around the water for like 4 months straight. So I can tell you like how crazy it was to see the effects. So since 1970, we have been raising in temperature by 1 degree. Well, not the average, by 1 degree per decade. So that doesn't seem like a lot, but like I said, when you add stuff together over time, it can change a whole ecosystem. And a lot of animals and species and stuff like that can adapt to that. And what happens? Extinction. So. Another thing that happens when water is increasing like that at that rate is we're susceptible to more algae blooming. And what happens is when it dies, it gets darker, and it can create such a toxic environment for cold water fish that they do die off, as they're not getting the oxygen they need. So fish that you love, like salmon, bass, whitefish, they can be gone, or the populations can be so general that we can't fish them anymore. Yeah, and this wasn't supposed to be in here, but you got it anyways. This is just how the ice coverage is declining. So if you live in this area and you've noticed, let's say you lived here for like 30 years plus, you probably noticed how Lake Huron and Georgian Bay is getting less and less ice coverage. And that really affects the fishing, especially when we live in a ecosystem, like in a region where cold water fish is what we rely on. Yeah, so how we can protect our fishing and traditional activities is, so I got cut off, is by just, using the resources and just making sure like a local government knows that we do want to conserve it and it is recognized and valued. So yeah, another thing I want to talk about really quickly, because I know I'm going over my time, I got a bit happy with my research and just wanted to throw everything at you guys, is that when the water level temperature rises, especially the surface, and we have harsher winters coming in, it mixes together and it causes what we call storms, like windstorms, snow squalls. When that pressure mixes together, it just creates like these superstorms. So you get gale force winds and storms like that on the river, and that stops, anybody who's logical from going out there and collecting the fish they need to either survive or for their business. And it also brings up all the contaminants at the bottom of the lake and mixes in, so the fish aren't as healthy as they could be. So again, how can we address it? And some ways we can address algae is by being really mindful about what we put in our environment. A lot of people don't know this, but a big factor into this is that we use chemicals on our yards. We use salt that later on goes into our water system and affects these fishes and affects the ecosystem really negatively. Yeah, so to protect our traditional ways, we just want to, like I said, make sure we use it and make sure we fight for it. So when this climate change happens, especially fishing and hunting, and water quality, the first people who are going to be hit hardest are the ones who are let's face it, the poorest, and who don't have access to those supermarkets every day, and who do rely on getting fish in the summer and fall and spring, etc. So we are those people, as Indigenous people. Another way we can protect ourselves is just to, and I've noticed this when I was researching, there's not a lot of data in Indigenous communities, and especially on lakes that aren't a Great Lake. So I found a lot of data about water quality and all that on Lake Huron from Saugeen Shores, but I haven't found anything, like not a lot, from Georgian Bay and especially from Neyaashiinigmiing. So you want to promote data collecting, and in the end it helps you receive more money to protect your environment, because that's what government funders want to know, some data. Okay, I'll wrap this up real fast because I'm going over my time. So a local example, and this is near to my heart, is the Saugeen organization, and also the forestry organization that we have in Saugeen. They partnered with Southampton and the Red Tree organization to help combat basically dead ash trees that just align the whole place. When you're from Southampton, you know that that place was just horrible. A tree could fall on you at any minute and you'd never know it. But what happened was it was infested with a certain type of beetle that just killed all the trees and trees around it, native trees to the land. And they just helped clean it up with partners from Saugeen. So this is Mandy Hunter, and she's a big alliance and has worked in Saugeen for a long time. And she goes around and she has her green thumbs and she makes the community a better place. They've also installed certain types of water systems where if it is draining and say you do have salt, because the big thing is the salt from Southampton, when they use it on the boats, it comes down and contaminates the lake. So the lake was just nasty. I wouldn't stop foot in it, and I've been in Lake Ontario, so you know how bad it is. Anyway, so they've set up systems where they strategically planned how they can filter this water. Again, that's just, some more photos of what they did. So in conclusion, despite all these facts I'm throwing at you, the best thing you can do is get involved however you like. You don't need to go here. You don't need to be giving speeches like I am. And you probably shouldn't if you have my skill set at it. Let's just be real. But you can, every small step counts. So everything, you can, just being here right now is really helping. It's showing that people came out and are interested in learning about this. And that helps our organization to tell our funders and other people, yes, people care about this. We're not just screaming at a brick wall. So little things matter, and if you're really gung-ho about it, you can talk to your local band council, but good luck. So, that's all, thank you. Why am I talking? I don't know what to talk.
So that was our section. So now we're actually going to do a quick call with Matthew Chapman. So he's a staff member for the Climate Reality Project Canada. So we're going to bring him into the live stream and also have him talk to everybody in the room. And I believe he's going to be speaking a little bit more about the organization.
Can you bring him in?
Yep, I can bring him in.
Because I can explain about it then. Okay.
That works for me. This works well for me.
So I'm Victoria Sird, I'm Creed as well. And I'm on the board of the Bagida'waad Alliance. but I'm also on the board of the Climate Reality Project Canada. So I just came back from a retreat in Quebec with people from the David Suzuki Foundation, from Natural Step, from a lot of different organizations across Canada, and I'm one of that board. So I was one of the first people that Al Gore trained back in 2007. I got the first group of Canadians that he trained. So I've been talking about climate change for a long time within the organization, but I started talking about global warming and that kind of stuff back in the 80s when I was a teenager. So I've been working on this issue for a very long time and plan to keep working on it for a very long time. The person that we're going to be bringing in 2 people to be able to talk with you for just a few minutes to say hi, basically, and talk a little bit about their own perspective things. So the first person that we're going to bring in to talk is Matthew Chapman, and he's one of the staff of the Climate Reality Project Canada that he's going to be calling in from Montreal. And he runs an initiative called the Community Climate Hub. And it's the idea that in little local areas that people can start up their own group that cares about climate change and that can do action with their within the political realm to try to be able to get concrete action on climate change happening. So he was going to be calling in to be able to talk about that for just a few minutes. And then, do you need my help with anything?
I don't think so. I invited him, so.
Okay, cool. So just tell me when he's ready. But and then after that, I at the retreat that I was at on the weekend, one of the staff from the United States organization was at the retreat, and I asked him if he would be willing to call in and say hi as well. And so we're actually, one of the vice presidents of the Climate Reality Project is going to call in, Hal Connolly, and that both of them have to be done before 9. So we changed the schedule around a little bit because the international broadcast starts at 9 o'clock, so both of them have things they need to do once it gets going. So I was able to agree to them both being able to chat with us just for a couple minutes and say hello. And Hal, one of the things that he works on a lot is Al Gore does trainings many times every year in different places around the world. And there's going to be a training that's in Atlanta, Georgia in March. We're hoping to be able to bring a van load of people down from up here to it. And so we'll drive down in a van and attend 3 days of training together. So we're trying to promote it a bit to see if people want to be able to go on that trip with us, and we'll try to help with the fundraising and make it easier to be able to go. There's no cost for actually attending the training. The only cost around it is for the travel and the food in the hotel or someplace to stay when people are down there. And we're like Brandy's all excited about helping out with the fundraising for us as a group collectively to be able to go down. So we're hoping to work on that, and so Hal will be encouraging people to come down and be able to meet him in person there. He's a great guy with a lot of good sense of humor. So how's it going? Did you?
That's how it's going. He's just checking his email.
Okay. Matthew's a very relaxed person. On the weekend, he was playing guitar and I was singing along with him for a couple hours. We had a nice time. There's quite a few people that are musicians here in the room that would appreciate that kind of a night while we were there. Yeah.
So when he comes on, he'll be on there.
Okay. I guess I'll just keep talking for a minute until. So. Okay, hold on. Did you find another one?
Hold on. No, sorry, go on.
So just so you know, but like the Climate Reality Project is the organization that's doing this 24 Hours of Reality event. And what it is they are doing a different hour on a different part of the world for 24 hours straight where they're live streaming. And at the start of every hour, Al Gore does a short 10-minute presentation about what's happening with climate change in that area. And then they have celebrities and people that are doing solutions in different communities around the world. And they have a bit of music that different artists, like musicians, will play music. And like it's big people, in different parts of the world. Like Jason Mraz does something almost every single time. They've had all sorts of meet people on those broadcasts. I mean, he does it just once a year. He does it to raise awareness. So I thought I like organizing an event to be able to watch it and around it, to be able to kind of bring people together and talk a little more about climate change, but in a way that's a little more fun. And we brought in the idea of doing some short speeches, which we'll be doing a little later, to see, like to hear a little bit of projects that other people are doing in the area, so we can connect around that and kind of know what's happening. There's a few people that we had asked to come that were going to be driving from a long way away, like for an hour or 2 hour drive, and some of them didn't feel comfortable driving up tonight with the weather. So we had a few more people that were going to be coming than were able to attend. But I know from one person that was going to come, we have a statement to read from them because they wanted people to hear about what we're working on together. So that will be coming up as well. You might need to bring Hal in before Matthew. Okay. So you might want to invite Hal and see if you can get him on. Sometimes the problem with doing live tech is that you've got to hope that it's going to work. We're kind of like the types of people that we'd rather try it than not, you know, like you might as well see if you can be able to do this. And by the way, at the end of the broadcast, so like we're going to watch the hour that's from 10 to 11 that's about Canada. And at 11 o'clock, Asif Iqbal is going to call in from Pakistan and tell us about a project he's working on where they're raising money for solar panels for girls' schools. So I thought it might be interesting to just hear from the whole other side of the world an example of a community that are coming together in order to be able to help with a situation that's really being affected by climate change.
Okay, sorry, just a quick question. Do you have some sort of way to contact them and let them know that it's a neighborhood?
Yeah, it's on the Google spreadsheet. It has his Gmail address. You just have to invite.
I sent it to Larry. I need to let him know that it's been sent. Because I was having trouble finding his.
Okay.
I should have made a sign technical difficulties. Walks around there.
Sorry.
We are
I have his card in my pocket.
Piece of paper.
Yes, an actual piece of paper that has his telephone number on it. So you can try that if you'd like. I hope it works because we only had this really short window of time to be able to get the two of them on.
Technically the tech works.
Yeah, so just to talk a little bit more about the training, it's like, well, actually, Brandy, do you want to tell people about the training a little bit?
Okay.
I've fallen told her to speak again.
She's lucky. I'm really hesitant at first, but once I get into it, it's easy. Plus, you guys have an easy audience. There's no booing, so that's nice. Okay, I can only speak from experience, you know. So basically, I was a co-op student in high school when I was invited to this training. She introduced me to the Climate Reality organization, and what it is, it's basically like, it's kind of like Facebook. You just get connected with a bunch of people, and you just broadcast what you're doing, and you guys try to do good with each other. I guess it's not like Facebook then. But when I went in 2015, so I remember it's 4 years ago, it was pretty amazing because at the time I was still, I think I was in grade 11, and I still wasn't, like, of course you learn a bit about climate change in school, but it's very basic information. And the way this organization presents it to you, it's way better than how I'm doing it right now. you get kind of sucked into it. I'm not the type of person who will just sit there for like 5 hours and soak things in, but they keep it really interesting and they give you access to like tools. So later on when you want to come back to it, say if you want to give a presentation, I don't know why you would, but if you do, then you can go back to the tools and like just like get the information that they have up on the screen and make it your own. Also, it's just a really great experience. You just meet so many great people from different organizations. It's really good for networking and getting connected to people. So if you want to do things in the future that maybe you don't have the connections for right now, it works out better. Also, it's really fun. Who doesn't love boat trips? Like, come on. Okay, that's my explanation. She can do better at this.
So we have Hal Connolly here on the phone from Washington, D.C. So Hal, you've got about 15 people here in the room in Neyaashiinigmiing, ready to hear you talk for a bit.
Oh, terrific. Well, thanks so much for having me. My name is Hal Connolly. I'm the Vice President of the Climate Reality Project, and we're really excited about 24 hours. I'm so glad that you can join us through a watch party. We're really glad to have you. It's going to be a great show with world leaders, musicians, celebrities, and all of them like you are deeply committed to solving the climate crisis. So we know it's going to be a great show. The end hour is at 10 p.m. Eastern. We've got the environment minister from British Columbia, Scott, who's a TV star and California TV actor. So it's going to be just a tremendous 24 hours. I'm so excited that you're going to be able to have a party and enjoy fun, and we'll all learn and be inspired by the solutions that we see around the world. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for taking the time out to call, Hal. We appreciate it. I hope the rest of the broadcast and everything goes well.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So take care. Thanks. Yeah. Bye. So I don't know if you remember a few years ago, you know, when there were Paris attacks that happened, when they had all the terrorism, and at that time there was a 24 hours of reality event that was ongoing right when that happened, and Hal was in Paris when that happened because he was part of the team that was running that event, and he was telling us stories on the weekend of actually having to go, like they had to dump a bunch of equipment out of a van and then transport them back to their hotel and undercover and all that kind of thing in order to protect Al Gore and this whole team of people from what was going on there. So many of us have had, we were running an event in Saugeen when that happened, and the broadcast stopped right before the Canadian hour was supposed to begin. And it kind of, it was all because some people wanted the Paris talks were going to be happening soon after that, where they were going to be talking about climate change internationally in Paris. And that terrorist attack was actually supposed to try to make people not want to do the climate talks. Like that, the point of that terrorism was to try to stop people from having that international conversation. So, Marina, sorry, I think Matt's ready. Sure. So anyway, sometimes like the action that people don't want to do the action, and it can be a big problem for being able to get things to go forward, because there are a lot of interest in us not acting on something that's this important. So, yeah. So hopefully it's working for Matt to come on. Is his
He's not on yet, but
It's working.
it's working?
Well,
Stop broadcasting.
there'll be a little box that pops up over here when he comes on, but he said the invite worked.
Okay.
So that's promising.
Yeah, I guess we've got a few more minutes to be able to. I'll keep talking again then. Well, just as soon as he comes on, though, then.
He's
What?
it says he's joining, but no progress.
Because we could have him call too on the phone if that's better. Or can he FaceTime us? I don't know if that's, he could FaceTime my phone and then they can pick it up through the computer too, right? Even though I guess that's two videos on at once.
No, because the video's through here.
Okay.
So that should technically work.
Okay. So, anything else that we should be mentioning?
Just since there's a little bit of time freed up due to some of the people not being able to come in, there's going to be a little bit more time for discussion later on. So if anybody has any questions or just things that they want to talk about, we'll have a bit of discussion time later as well.
Yeah, just, I know that we have some of our representatives here, so I don't know if anyone is looking to present their stuff, so that I know that there's just,
I just don't want to interrupt him if Matt gets on. Yeah. So we're just.
Where is your FaceTime? Sorry. Oh wait, I just found it.
Okay.
You good? Okay. Hold on. Oh, look at me. I'm the last person you FaceTime. Very nice.
Okay. Do you have to call him or do you call him?
You can call.
It's always fun to deal with technology when it's live in particular.
I got to participate once in this actual like discussion with Al Gore, and it was through Google Hangouts as well, and it got delayed, I think, an hour or an hour and a half because of tech issues. Like, and this was 4 or 5 years ago. So like,
Not much has changed.
yeah, exactly. So using the same technology and still not working.
Could be a time difference.
Yeah.
We're building anticipation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's just building the suspense for sure.
Like, do you want me to call him?
Well, you don't call him through your phone.
Just the back.
The one I showed you?
No. Not if it's an outgoing. Okay. You want me to call him through here?
Yeah.
I don't know if this,
Because he's in my contact list.
Okay, oh my gosh.
Or I can tell you the number.
Where's he at?
He's in Montreal. There he is.
You did it.
no.
So can you tell him that we're
Our video is super odd for some reason, but we're on with you. And
Cool.
for some reason, you can only see our ceiling, and I don't know why.
Is it going out of your room?
Oh, yeah, it's coming out.
No problem.
Oh yes, here we are. Very good. So.
Hello.
Did I meet Hal? Was Hal fun?
Oh, yeah, it was last.
It didn't work for him to get on the video for us,
Okay.
but we talked to him on the phone.
All right. Cool. All right. Am I on an iPad right now, or am I on a tiny phone?
There we go.
You're projected on a big screen.
You're on a screen.
I can make you even bigger too. There we go. I made you even bigger.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hope my hair and makeup people did a good job. There you go. Your screen is probably horizontal.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, I flipped it so you could see more people in the room.
I want to do gymnastics. Is this like a 24 hours of reality gymnastics club? That's like fun. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I should probably move around a bit more. Yeah. Oh, you have no idea. I'm not sure what your name is, but don't lose the spirit, because the rest of us, we just get old and we sit around.
Matthew has a baby at home that's a little older than Cregan, so he's used to the moving of the children.
Yes. So you guys usually a late night crowd? Are you excited to stay up until at least 11 p.m. watching the segment?
I've had at least 6 copies.
Okay. And what's the feeling, there? Are you guys, what's like the most common way that people get engaged on climate? Is it little things, big things, federal things, local things, trees? I know Victoria's probably had each of you planting at least a dozen trees.
We're trying.
I think it's a struggle. I think it's a struggle for people to be involved in the climate. We have a water source protection committee in the community. We try to meet monthly to talk about and to develop a strategy that protects the groundwater or the source of water. And we wanted it to be, to make it bigger, so we just called it water protection or water, something of that nature, because we wanted to have a bigger impact. So some of the things that we've done is we've had a number of meetings. They've even had some testing done on how quick contaminants will move through the soil. And I think that was maybe a couple of years ago, so that we could have a baseline, I guess, to whereas to, for example, in our landfill, if there was anything that was toxic or not good, how quick would it move from the landfill into Georgian Bay?
Okay.
So I think we're still in the stages of developing the strategy, but we're also becoming also aware that it's personal. It takes personal effort. You can't be altruistic with water. You have to be able to do it here first. You have to know what it is that you do and own what you do. And if what you do is not a good thing, then you need to change what you're doing. Because you can't just be a talking head.
Right.
I had the privilege of walking the Bruce Trail for the past 2 years, and we walked to the original sources, the springs that feed the lakes.
He wants to see her.
Is it okay if
Sorry,
Sorry, if you can come over, yeah, it's just.
I walked the Bruce Trail from Niagara Falls to Neyaashiinigmiing, and we were able to see all the sources, the spring sources, and the difference from Niagara Falls to Neyaashiinigmiing in the environment, the cleanliness of the water as we came up north, and in from last year to this year, the difference in all the springs and rivers that kind of dried up, like what we're losing, So I think that's probably one of the best ways that you could be aware is walk that trail and see those springs, because that's what we got to do, and we got to pray at each one and offer tobacco. Like we did that for a whole month, for 2 years in a row, and it's going to happen for 2 more years. So that's our way of letting the people know, like, this is what you can do, and this is how you're going to see all this. This is the water that's feeding our lakes, and we're going to be protecting these springs. So I think everybody, whenever we do it again, probably around August of the summer coming, people can join in. Like we carry the water in a copper vessel, and we carry a eagle staff, and talk to people on the way to create awareness that way. And that's what our group kind of does. So, that's our way of creating awareness, and it's at the same time we're blessing each other for the gifts that we each give. So that's our Mother the Earth really enjoys that we're doing this and noticing what creation has provided for us. So so if people want to join the water walk, you don't have to walk for the whole month. You could just carry the water, the staff for a day or whatever anybody wants to do. So we're welcoming anybody that wants to come and join us as a group. Miigwech.
Perfect. So yeah, I understand water. Water is life. That's a pretty big rally cry across a whole bunch of First Nation communities.
Yes.
Is there anything? I'm totally ignorant, but is there anything equivalent for air, or a similar? Are there any air pollutant traditions?
We haven't done that, but we breathe. Well, our breath is sacred, so, I think we as a First Nation are kind of aware of that, of the breath that we take in and we breathe out. Like, when I wake up in the morning and I open the door and I give thanks to all that is, I smell that air and I can smell the difference day by day. I'm wondering, okay, where's this pollution coming from? That kind of thing. So you just kind of have to look where we live. We live by nuclear plants and different plants that are sending out the dirt to the air, and we're breathing that. And, so if people just go out every day, like if you do it every day, you notice those little changes when you're breathing that air in. Those changes are there, whether we notice or not, but just try to do that. Just go out every day and smell it. Because you can smell the difference. I can smell the difference every day when I go out. So everybody else should try that too. They'll get an understanding.
If we put you to a blind test, could you tell the difference between 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide and 400 parts per million?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to train people. That's gonna be the next level of climate activism.
Yeah.
So I can't see everybody there, but were some of you at ClimateCon? Because I think I recognize you there. Yes. A small screen, a very small screen. But I still have your Bagida'waad alliance.
Number one fan.
How many of you are involved in that group?
There's 3 in the room.
Okay, cool.
We have someone wanting to make a comment. So you're just gonna hear her voice.
Well, I guess
someone else.
I'll give up my picture because I really feel there's a greater cause than what we can even share right now, because the water coming from Niagara Falls underground was, a dye was put in it, it came out in Murray. The falls underneath Murray is 7 times greater than Niagara Falls, so they do know that there's a water flow underground. There is a lake there, and if you look at the Finger Lakes that branch out from that Niagara Falls, it's affecting all of us. But my own crusade on my own is, I've noticed the atmosphere changes, and we see that the plant blew up in Russia. We see the nuclear plant blew up in Russia. We've seen it blow up in China. We see that we have a leak down in Kansas someplace. Right now, the Ottawa River is spewing radiation into the river there. And I phoned a cousin up in Perry Island, and I said to this cousin in Perry Island, when they had the fire there, I said, I got your smoke signals. I said, now what were you trying to tell me? But because I could see the smoke, I knew that radiation is in the air from these nuclear plants. There's so many of our people dying of cancer, so many young people that don't even smoke. It's affecting our gardens, it's affecting our water, it's affecting everything. So I try to go to the purest place. I know we have town water here, but I try to go to an underground source, which is a spring water. So my private crusade is going to a lot of meetings and telling these people who are dignitaries, this is my message, and I'm really concerned about the environment. All the vegetables we eat, all the water we drink, the whole environment that everybody's breathing is very toxic because of the nuclear. And they want to put a plant up here in King Carden, but that water still is flowing underground. We have no guarantee with Mother Nature, with the earthquakes and with the storms, and Mother Nature is the boss of all of us. And I hear some of our elders of some of the conference I go to, she said, because I live near a mill and all this sawdust from the mill is coming in, she said, my body might be sick, she said, but my mind is well. So that's where I speak from, a voice from her, from our elders way back when, that it's deeper than what we realize. It's in our atmosphere, every breath we take. So if we can think about nuclear, how can we dissolve that? We can clean our sinks out with vinegar and soda. Surely the nuclear plant can do something to make a change right there. It's very, very toxic. Thank you.
How many kilometers away would you guys be from Bruce?
An hour,
72 kilometers.
about an hour away.
Isn't it 72?
It's serious.
Well, Matthew?
Yeah.
I'm back. I
Hey,
just saw
it's been
you
a while.
yesterday.
Yeah.
You had a phone call at 9, right? So I should let you
Yeah,
get going.
yeah.
It was really nice for you to call in and say hi to everyone, and appreciate Miigwech, everybody, for sharing with Matthew. We're gonna get on next because we've got some people doing elevator speeches about their projects that they're doing in the communities, and a few of them need to get going pretty shortly too. So
Cool.
we appreciate your time. It's really nice to see your friendly face. I hope Adlin's feeling better.
We found a new way to blow our nose today.
There you go.
Yeah, she takes to it. She takes to it better than the old way.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
That's really good.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot again for joining us, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Yes. Bye everyone. Bye from Montreal. It doesn't look like Montreal where I am here, but yeah, Montreal. Oh, there's our little Montreal, carbon neutral Montreal poster thing. Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, so the next part of our schedule is to do the elevator speeches, and I heard that Dee Dee, that you wanted to be able to go first because you don't have a lot of time. So I don't know if you're willing to come in front of the video because we're streaming this out and other people will be able to watch it later if they want. So if you wouldn't mind coming up here, that would be wonderful.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for accommodating me. A teething baby at home and an early morning, 5 o'clock was early, so appreciate you letting me speak first. My name is Deidre Miller. Everybody that I work with called me Dee Dee because I work at the elementary school here in Neyaashiinigmiing. Our school's name is Bagida'waad, and it means a place of knowledge. And I feel very blessed and privileged that that is my job, that I have the privilege of working with the young people and just being a small part of pouring into them knowledge and education and experience, especially when it comes to the land. So we're really getting into land-based learning. And definitely what we're noticing when we're gardening, we have school gardens, and a lot of the land-based activities that we're doing, we are noticing big differences in the plants, in just the conditions that it takes to grow food, and and the kids are noticing it, and so. When we talk about climate change, it's a serious threat. We're doing all of these things to try to be sustainable, and yet, we can't control the climate. So, I mean, that needs to be a real discussion that's happening with our young people, because they are our next leaders. They are the generation that is going to continue to carry the torch and effectualize change. So, one of the things I was thinking about, like what our school, our name, Bagida'waad, place of knowledge, we have so much knowledge. We know what is going on in the world. We have experts telling us, scientists. We have our elders. I think of what my grandmother used to say. Her grandmother told her. And at that time, when my grandma was a little girl in the 1900s, it would have seemed ridiculous to hear, but her grandmother told her, one day you will have to pay for water. One day the food that you eat will make you sick. And at that time, when my grandmother was just a little girl, no, goodness, that can't be right. Because everything was cleaner then, and it didn't make sense. But now we're seeing that here. And so, you know, what our elders have been telling us, those prophecies are coming true. And we need to take it very seriously. And I was thinking about knowledge. So we have all this knowledge, but I heard a teacher once say that wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. So we can have all the knowledge in the world, but just like Joanne said, unless we are willing to do something, knowledge is nothing. So unless we are going to rightly apply it and walk in that wise way, in that way of wisdom, knowledge is just up here. So, and just even the comment that, you know what, it starts with me. It starts with you. We can look and become very discouraged if we look at the big corporations, and it's a serious threat and a reality. But, you know, we could become discouraged, but really where change is going to start is, it starts here. What is something that I can do right now, today, to start change in my household, in my family? Because I'm thinking, you know what I teach my son, that is going to carry on in our lineage, in our generation. And I'm changing a generation by what I am teaching him and what I am modeling at home. And that's just my challenge for everybody. That, you know, yes, you know, as a community, we need to stand together and we need to be a voice in this generation, but also remember the responsibility. It starts with me, it starts with you, it starts with us, in our own households, in our own families, to walk in that way of wisdom. And that's how I believe we're going to see change in the next generation.
So the next speaker we had was Joanne Anderson. So who's one of the people that's on the board of the Bagida'waad Alliance. But he's also in the middle of doing a documentary around climate change and the solutions that people are doing in Grand Prairie counties. So we invited him here to be able to tell people a little bit about that project and what he's been doing.
Okay, thanks. Victoria, well, my name is John Anderson. I'm a marine scientist. I grew up here in Ontario with this dream to be a marine scientist, and I was. My wife and I, we lived 30 years in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I studied fish in the North Atlantic. When we retired, we came back to Ontario. Our families are here. And I immediately wanted to know what was going on with climate change here, because this is something I had been studying down east. And I couldn't find very much, at least on Ontario. I could find global and national things. So I built a data set and looked at it, and yeah, our climate was definitely changing here. And eventually I built like 6 data sets that go from Delhi and London in the north, in the south rather, Goderich, Owen Sound, North Bay, and Sudbury. So it's a swath right up to this part of Ontario. So it's given me a pretty good sense of how our climate's changing. And so then I was getting tired of talking about the collapse of the Atlantic cod. People kept inviting me to give some talks. So I said, well, I want to talk about climate change. And so I did. And I realized pretty early on, it's not really about the science. And the science is pretty well done and known. It's about people, it's about societies, it's about belief systems. It turns out it's about denial of climate change. It's about the fossil fuel industry and the power of that fossil fuel industry to thwart attempts to go forward on climate change. And of course, it's not just about us, it's about our children, our grandchildren, and the generations that are going to come after us. And I really like the way Margaret Atwood put it. This was just over a year ago. She said, it's not climate change, it's everything change. We're looking at a transformational change in the way we live and the things we value. We've moved from a society of more, I tell people, to a society of just enough. And so that's the kind of transformational change that we're going to do. And what, of course, I'm talking about is living sustainably. And then doing that, building resilience. And so this is like the message that I've been taking out and giving to people. And after giving many talks over a number of years, I realized I'm only reaching hundreds of people, and I would really like to reach thousands. So I teamed up with poet and filmmaker Liz Zetlin from Owen Sound, And 2 years ago, we've been working on this film. And we're getting pretty close. And this film, as Victoria said, is about us right here, stories, our local stories, and what is happening. We also talk a lot about solutions, because when I engage with people about climate change, they want to know what to do. And sociologists tell us people will change when they know three things. What's the problem? How will it affect me? And what can I do about it? So that's sort of the theme of this film. We're just about done the filming. We're on track to launch next May. We've got the Roxy Theatre booked. I think it's May 19 will be our international launch day. So if you're interested, you can follow us. We have a Facebook page and a website. I've got some cards here if you're interested. We have a GoFundMe campaign. We're still raising money. We're just in the process of putting in a grant to the Ontario's Arts Council, where we'd like to hire a young person who will facilitate the screenings of the film in the year ahead. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you, John. The next speaker we have on our list is Barry Randall, and then Stuart, you're going to be after that, just so you know. the lineup for the agenda.
Thanks, Victoria. As Victoria said, my name is Barry Randall, and about 10 years ago, Victoria and myself and a number of other people who were working together on local environmental issues in Grey Bruce got together and said it's time to form a group. I've lived in this area for now almost 25 years. And there weren't really too many groups working on environmental issues. Those of us that were coming together, and it was time to form a regional organization. So Victoria, myself, and a number of other people said, we're going to create a not-for-profit group called the Grey Bruce Sustainability Network that's going to do a couple of things. Among other things, Victoria and some skilled writers wrote the mandate for the organization, got the not-for-profit status. Nothing on the application was changed. It was approved just like that, so they're very skilled writers. And the basic mandates of the organization was to facilitate, number one, to facilitate networking across the region, to host events and to connect with people, find out what's going up in the Bruce Peninsula, what's also going on down in Kincardine, what's going on over in Meaford on all these issues, but then sharing that information so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel if they want to do something like recycle film plastic, a soft plastic that isn't included in the blue box. Well, they're doing it in Meaford, they're doing it in Brockton now, in Walkerton. Let's share that information across the networks. So that networking is one of the key functions of the organization. It's a difficult task. It's all about data. It's all about Facebook. It's all about the internet. It's all about corralling all this information and knowing what people are doing and keeping it up to date. So the other mandate is to facilitate projects, by talking with everyone and understanding what's going on, to figure out what are the projects that need to be done. And in order to do that, we host coffee houses. We invite people in every community to come together. We just hosted one in Lions Head not too long ago. People come together. We get about 8 different speakers to do 3-minute elevator speeches about their project. And then we have music and we have food. So I haven't heard any music tonight, but we have food. maybe we will. So part of that message is we gotta have some fun with this. It can't all be just we're in dire bad straits. So part of that is building community through social interactions using music and that sort of thing. So another big focus for us is climate change, and on 2 sides, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and also building more resilient, adaptive communities. So we have a number of projects on each of those things, on each of those sides that looks at different types of buildings, everything from straw bale and clay cob type structures that are more energy efficient, use less energy. And on the adaptive side, we're saying communities need to be better able to absorb water rather than simply collect it on pavement and try and fit it in the sewer. So we have some really interesting projects that are talking about green roofs and more green areas in your urban community. So that's just touching on some of the projects that we're involved with, but one of the key focuses is to entertain project proposals. Because we have a well-established not-for-profit corporation, we can host project proposals and we can get grants and donations and that sort of thing for people that need some kind of a financial organization to do that. And there's several of us, similar organizations around, but we look forward to ideas coming on the table and then helping the project proposal come to fruition, which may also then potentially lead to small business development and blending the economy pillar with the environmental pillar and the social cultural pillar of the three-legged stool, so that the stool doesn't fall over. So that's my pitch. Thanks so much for hosting this event tonight, and look forward to further opportunities to get together. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Yeah, we've been working together for many years. And if you ever get a chance to go to one of the Greater Sustainability Network's coffee houses, they're really fun events because it's similar to this, where you get to hear a little bit about a bunch of good projects, and they always have young musicians and good food. So quite a few of us have gone to many of them. I'd encourage you to do that. The next speaker is Stuart. I was just checking. Stuart Reid from the Community Foundation Grey Bruce. Recently, the Bagida'waad Alliance received a grant from the Community Foundation for $3,000, and it's towards our project where the youth are going to be documenting the stories in the community around fishing and climate change and the effects on the lakes. And so we're very proud of being able to get that funding from the Community Foundation. In a few minutes, Natasha is going to be talking more about that and that project, but we asked if Stuart would be able to come and tell us a little bit about the Community Foundation tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Victoria, and thank you. It's wonderful. It's a privilege to be here and partaking in this evening's program. So, Community Foundation Grey Bruce is coming up to 25 years old next year. It was established in 1994, originally as the Owen Sound and Area Community Foundation. And it's an organization that builds community assets, and we invest that capital in various ways. And then the income from the investment of the assets, we grant back to charities and not-for-profits across the region. Right now, our foundation manages just over $16 million. And this year, for example, we're granting out about $750,000 to projects right across Grey Bruce. So we're locally run by volunteers from the community. Actually, Martha Bagida'waad, one of your members here at Neyaashiinigmiing, is on our board this year and last year. So we have local people that are invested in stewarding the assets and making decisions on the grants. So it's a real community-based grassroots mechanism to do good things in the community, and it's wonderful work. One project that we're involved in that I wanted to talk just briefly about is called the Great Lakes One Water Project, and it's been initiated by the Council of Michigan Community Foundations, and it's linking up community foundations that are all around the Great Lakes to come together to talk about the health of our lakes and the health of the Great Lakes generally, and protection of water. And so Community Foundation Grey Bruce is working with two foundations on the other side of Lake Huron. We're called the Lake Huron Basin. And right now we're developing an action agenda about projects that we want to tackle that would make a healthier Lake Huron. And I want to thank Barry, who's on the working group for that. Victoria's been involved a little bit too. We're talking about projects that will address stormwater management with nature-based solutions. So it's about finding natural ways to improve the quality of the water that's coming coming. We heard about the deluges, the way more water's falling, and we have to find ways to make sure it's clean before it enters back into the lake. So we're going to be talking to the community about that in the next couple of years. There's about $400,000 that will be potentially available to our local region, and that'll be seed money that we'll use to leverage other donations and maybe build endowments to help us with water management and sustainable water projects in decades to come. What else should I say? Did I mention we're part of a network of 191 across the country from coast to coast to coast? So it's estimated that 90% of Canadians are served by a community foundation in their area. So it's quite an amazing network of people that are engaged in making their communities better places to live. So we look forward to working with you all in the years ahead. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. I guess I should probably mention that I used to sit on the board of the Canadian Foundation Grey Goose as well. So just, just another one of those boards that I've worked on. So I think it's a wonderful organization, and again, thanks for coming all the way up to. I had a nice drive on an icy night, both you and Barry together. So the next person to speak is one of the organizers of the event, Natasha Akawenti. She's the manager of the Bagida'waad Alliance. Bagida'waad in Anishinaabe means they set a net, and it was started with the Indigenous fishermen, fishing families here at Neyaashiinigmiing. We're seeing a lot of changes on the Great Lakes, like around Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, and formed a group to be able to talk about how that is, gather the stories around that, work on climate change with youth, and also do more stewardship activities. So I'll let Natasha talk more about that.
Thank you. I don't know what else to say now. You took away all my
Soldier thunder. Oh dear.
My goodness. Okay. How Bagida'waad started? About a year ago, almost to the date, I was handed a grant for Indigenous climate monitoring grant for the feds. I wasn't feeling too well, and I left it to the last minute. And in January, I picked it up again, and I was advised by another very well-known person in the local area, Philly Walkovitz. And she suggested I call Victoria and talk to her about climate change. Well, my life has changed from that day on dramatically. I think all in good ways. I think
Those late nights.
many late nights, many crazy mornings, talking to very different people, but very unique opportunities too. So we decided to form a board. I went a non-profit board, and I went to the three fishermen, which one, the easiest one to convince to join the board was my husband. That was pretty much a guaranteed shoe on. And then I approached two other board fishermen, which is Guy Nadjuan and Francis LaValle. And they both agreed to join the board because what we were saying was very similar to what my husband's saying, that it's very wind, a lot of wind. The winds are coming up from nowhere with very little warning. Safety becoming an issue. The fish was down. Things were just happening that they have never seen before. They were catching fish they haven't caught before. And they were all saying it, and they all fish in different areas. So it was very nice to be validated, but not in a good way, I guess. So Victoria was on board. We approached John Anderson, and we convinced him to join our board as a scientist. And from there, we attempted to write a number of grants, many late nights, Our board has now added 2 more, Brandy Farr and also Doug Miller. So we are now up to 8. And Megan Lipka. Yes, and Megan Lipka. And she's an entrepreneurial from Owen Sound. Anyway, we all came together, we all had the same idea that climate change is happening. We wanted to really look at fisheries. We wanted to capture, the fishermen asked us, one of the biggest things that they wanted to capture was the stories of the fishermen. Because they felt like it was going to be a lost art, especially when my husband fishes by holding net by hand. So anyway, we did write a number of grants, many. I've lost count, I think up to 15, I think. We've been accepted by 3 of them. We have an Indigenous Culture Grant. We are still operating and documenting and interviewing fishermen, past, present, and hopefully some future fishermen. We also hope to film them. We also got a $5,000 grant from the Indigenous Culture Fund again to do a net seaming workshop, which will be on January 11th, 12th. And it's hoping to teach people how to seam nets. And also we got a $3,000 grant from the community foundations to help along with that documentary with the fishermen. And we're waiting back for a few more to help a very long list of many other ones that we have written to help with this project. Because we're hoping to really document this. When it's complete, we're hoping to be able to show it at the Sources of Knowledge forum in the spring, hopefully, if it's complete. And other than that, I think that we're where we are right now. Thank you.
You see, she's another one of those speakers, when she gets rolling, it's great, right? So thanks, Natasha. The next speaker on our list is Joanne Keeshig. If you could come up and share a few more words with us. Good.
Bonjour, Linda Magnido, Bazangi Clan Ishnikas, Mangan and Roden, Singai, Guan Ishmidale, Neyaashiinigmiing. I had a little meeting about 2 weeks ago with JossAnn and Natasha, sitting right beside her, and about this event. And there were questions of how should we organize this? What should it look like? And this is an event about climate change, but to be able to talk to it from an Anishinaabe Indigenous perspective. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how should we start? And so some of those things are the smudging, opening with prayer and tobacco, lifting the water, because those are all things that belong to us. Those are all things that were given to us as Anishinaabe. And when we come together as groups of people to talk about important things, the things that we address first are things of the spirit. But that's really who we are. We are spirit beings having a physical experience on this earth. And so, and that was my advice. And in the process of talking to JossAnn and Natasha about being Anishinaabe, where does our story start? Our story starts at the beginning, before there was anything. We're told in our teachings that, that everything that happens in the physical world is something that happens in the spirit first. And so we were talking in almost every story about us can be related to how we are experiencing life today. Everything that is happening is supposed to happen. It's here. Our collective mindset has called it all together and brought it all here. Has brought each and every one of us, because that's another story that talks about everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. But the story that we were talking about was that, and it's actually the story of the sunrise. And why that's so critically important to us as a Anishinaabe, why it is, as Charlene's talked about, is that why we get up in the morning and we greet the sun. And why is it that we start our lives that way? 5 o'clock in the morning, someone said they're awake. And that doesn't happen by chance. There's a reason for that. And so in the beginning, before the beginning, when everything was still in the spirit, still of the spirit, before there was anything physical, Creator called all of the animal spirits together and talked to them and said that there was going to become a time in the lives of the earth's children that they were going to need something. You know, and one by one, each one of those animal spirits stepped forward and offered themselves to the earth's children. Walshesh, the deer, stepped forward and said, I will give of myself. I will give my physical body so that there will be nourishment. So when that time comes, the earth's children will have something to eat. They can use my body. And they can use my hide for clothing and shelter, and my bones for tools. Because that's what we were given. Those are basic natural laws that we were given as an Anishinaabe, that we would use everything and waste nothing. You would only take what you need. You would never overfish. You would never over-harvest anything. You always made sure that if you took something, you put something back. And it was always your tobacco went first. So those are the things. And we're missing those things. This isn't something that gets taught in the schools. Because it's not. We can thank colonization for that. But the story that I wanted to tell was that, and it's, the link to that is climate change. Because in that time, the Creator, Gajamanado, had become so disappointed with the earth's children that they had forgotten their original teachings, their original way of being on the earth. They put aside their songs and their stories and their ceremonies. And Creator was so upset. So upset that Creator was going to call upon the spirit of destruction and destroy the entire earth. But because of that meeting in the spirit world, there is a special relationship that happened between Anishinaabe and Miigwech the eagle. It was like a very close brotherhood relationship, a genuine love and caring for each other. And so, as Miigwech had heard the Creator, Bagida'waad, our grandfather, say how disappointed that he was on how Anishinaabe, the Earth Children, had forgotten and put aside all of their original teachings, and that he was going to call upon the spirit of destruction to destroy the earth. And it was Miigwech who asked Creator, wait, I'm sure there is someone. I'm sure they haven't forgotten. Let me go and see. Let me go and find. I know there is someone who has remembered. And so Miigwech was given 4 days by Creator to fly over the earth, looking for the evident truth that the original teachings were not forgotten. And on that 4th and final day, when he got up to make that flight, looking, flying to the east, looking, and something caught his eye. And it was the smallest bit of smoke coming from a very meager fire. And Miigwech went over to examine what he was seeing. And there he found an old man and an old woman. The old man with his tobacco in his hand and the old woman with her water. And beside them were 2 children, a little boy and a little girl. And just as that sun was rising, that old man was showing those children how to use their tobacco, how to talk to the Creator in that very special way. And that old woman was showing her granddaughter how to lift that water and to ask for those blessings on that most sacred water, that medicine water. And when he saw that, he flew as swift as he could through that doorway that opens just as the sun is beginning to rise at the horizon. And he flew and he called 4 times to Creator, telling him, I found them, I found it. They've remembered. And that's why we're still here today. And we can hear that story 20 years from now, 30 years from now. We could have heard it 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And the circumstances are still the same. We have brought ourselves to the brink of destruction, our own doing. Our own doing. But here's the thing. We still have our tobacco. We still have this, the most powerful medicine that we were given, that we can still ask for life, we can still ask for help, we can still ask those things that are necessary for life. We just need to be able to ask, and we need to remember who we are, that we are spirit beings. We have to remember that. We have to remember that. And then when we remember that, we can change what needs to be changed. And we can ensure a future for our children and our grandchildren. You.
Miigwech. The last person that was on our list was not able to come, Brian McHattie, and he's from the Sources of Knowledge Forum, and he asked us to read something from him to everyone. So it says, the 11th Annual Sources of Knowledge Forum is going to be on May 3rd to 5th next year in Tobermory. This year's forum will focus on Fathom 5 National Marine Park, asking the question, has the park reached its potential as a protected area, and how does it compare to similar parks in the Great Lakes? Session topics include the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Michigan, Apostle Islands National Lakeshore in Lake Superior, a State of the Fathom 5 ecosystem talk, understandings of how fish travel through Fathom 5 and beyond, and learnings from the Bagida'waad Alliance's work in Neyaashiinigmiing on the shores of Georgian Bay. The much-loved Stephen Sharper Film Festival follows the Saturday evening dinner. For more information, please contact Brian McHattie, and if I have his email here, or visit sourcesofknowledge.ca if people would like to be able to hear more. So it was good of Brian to send that along. They partnered with us on the $3,000 grant that we received from the Community Foundation, so that we would have a charity to flow the money through for us, because the Bagida'waad Alliance is a not-for-profit corporation. We're working on charitable status, but we're not there yet, and it was good of them to partner with us on this, and then we'll go and show the documentary and have a few speakers at their event to be able to talk about the effects on the lake here as well. So that is the elevator speech part, and we have a break now for a little bit. The Canadian hour that the watch party is around starts at 10 o'clock. I also wanted to mention and say Miigwech to outside there, Andrew and Chris Akawenzi are keeping a stick and fire for us all. And we also have an opportunity to be able to make a short video about just saying, hey, we're here in Neyaashiinigmiing and we're having a watch party. So maybe we can come back in about 10 minutes and we could do a little one like that with the people that want to participate. And we also have a chance to be able to put in a few questions if we wanted to see if Hal Gore would answer them. So if anybody's interested in that part, I know Josh has been working on a question. So hopefully we can do that now in the break. And if anyone else has a question that they would like to put forward, the opportunity is there. Because the Bagida'waad Alliance is an official partner on this event, it means they're more likely to be able to show something from us, which is pretty exciting, that we have the chance to be seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world with either a question or just saying hi from our watch party. So we'll have a break for about 10 minutes and then come back for that quick little video saying hi. And then we'll be watching the live broadcast for an hour that's about Canada. Okay, thanks.
I'm just going to add this, the fire our grandfather has responded to our request, and he is burning really brightly out there. So that's an invitation. There's a bowl of tobacco on this table over here, and you are invited to take some of this tobacco, just put your own prayers and your thoughts about this event, what it is that you want to accomplish, what your wishes are. And the firekeepers, they've got the grandfather going. It looks really good. He's really big. and that's what we need. We need to set the world on fire, so to speak, you know, to get everyone going. So I guess the other thing I'll say too is that this our tobacco The SEMA is one of our four sacred medicines, and it is a powerful medicine. We're told that you only need to, the instant that you pick this up is the same instant Creator knows what your heart desires. Okay, so that's the invitation. You could come and take some of the SEMA, wrap it up in your prayers, and you can take it off to the fire. Miigwech. In your left hand. It goes in your left hand, but that's your heart hand. Closest to your heart. Well, they got it open, if you go through the trees over here, that's the closest one in. It's just as well lit.
Survival tactics. Finish it, guys.
So that is the reason I have to do the hard just to go on it. I can teach. I'm teaching at college tomorrow. I'm using the telephone now. The landline.
Nice job, Sean.
Yeah, it's so big, I said, it's like all these like custom sugar everywhere. Yeah, I said, God, it's so party. Yeah. Is it okay if
For me, to write a letter. It's just a matter of putting it so.
I just the one who's
My goal is.
Pretty sure you're like, no, it's not a nice
Something right.
What is this one? What is this one?
I did too. I did. But those things all have solutions. You can always solutions. But what about this idea of working with Paris Canada?
No, I think you just. Sorry. I didn't want to hop out. Also, what you have.
Yeah. He's talking here.
He's a very good name.
Do you have like a time or is he too young still? Sleep.
He sleeps when he wants, he usually sleeps, when he gets better at my 9:30, so he's a little bit later, but he sleeps through the night, so.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
Boy,
He's a
you
good
get
baby.
The next trend is mostly just equipment. Like I said, I always like.
I love your spirit.
Yeah, no, that's all, yeah.
Yeah, so I might shape and I'm trying
They
to.
made it for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're making something with this all of us.
That was 3 October.
Yeah.
When you're ready? I already have the name. So, put my name out.
Oh, but that's easy, just.
Also just.
No, when I was standing there listening to the instincts over there, I didn't think anything, you know, data collection, information, all those things.
I'm gonna take them if you want me to.
I don't know. If you realize that the easy part, you won't know this here, the easy part is getting there. The tough part is spending. We always work. We work our brains and brains. And we get these conditions. Timelines, and all this.
It's a beautiful.
And you start going.
No, I see what I mean.
That's why you gotta. Yeah, we.
My daughter sings right now.
No, but Victoria.
Yeah, so that's why I'm at business one.
There's all that functional stuff too. Like, we've been 2 years on this field. Phil and I thought we'd been a few months. And it just, all sorts of things. Like, trees. What's up with this? I don't think I can see too much.
He's not doing your
Really gets
Yes,
bored.
you got one. Can I read
Bored.
it? My leg, right? I'm gonna get my everything. So nice to finally meet on with. And we need a background. That looks good. Like for video. Yeah. So. Where do you want to see it?
So I'm gonna go see the fire.
Okay.
And how do I put it? What do I do? I'm making a wish.
Hold in your left hand.
Hold my left hand.
It's what's in your heart, so whatever
My heart
you're
is
feeling.
thinking, what climate change?
Yeah. Oh my God. What did you do? So that's the same thing.
And it's so fast.
Or
Thank you. How do you do it?
So we're gonna record the video of Josh asking a question. So just,
Recording right now?
yeah, that is still recording.
Oh, okay.
So it's just staying on. But we're gonna record the video right now, so if everybody would just quiet while he does that.
I went up the fire.
And he did this in a few takes if we need, okay? So don't be too worried about it, because you get a chance to.
Don't be shaky.
And just tell me whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario. My question is, recently we had a temperature fluctuation from -5 to +8 degrees. Is that related to the climate change? And what other indicators that we see in my area?
That was good. That works. Yeah. That's really good. Do you want to try one more time?
Oh, that's right.
I wrote this like 2 hours ago, or like an hour ago. You guys be quiet for just a minute. We're gonna record a question, so if you just don't mind, thank you. You ready? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario. My question was, there has been a temperature fluctuation of -55
You'll feel better. Yeah. No worries.
Hi, my name is Josh. I am from Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario. My question was, there has been a temperature fluctuation of -1 plus 8 degrees. Hi, my name is Josh. I am from Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario, and my question was, there has been a recent temperature fluctuation of -5 degrees to 8 plus 8 degrees. I was wondering if that could be related to climate change and what other indicators might we see in my area? Miigwech.
Woo-hoo! That was a good one. Did you like that one? Okay, because we can watch it back if you want. So you can see it.
Oh my god, it's like jerky whenever I watch these.
That's hard. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to watch it again.
My question is, there has been a recent temperature fluctuation of -5 degrees to 8 plus 8 degrees. I was wondering if that could be related to climate change and what other indicators might we see in the area?
It looked good. I like it. It looked good. You agree with that? Yeah.
I know, I don't like watching myself after.
That was awesome.
I don't like watching myself. This is the video.
I know, I don't like it either, but you did a great job. Should be happy with it.
All right, Libby, give me your boots then. You can only fit one toe. I'm gonna become a nationalist. No, it's just what you just said.
Because we're gonna watch the show for now. We're actually gonna watch that.
You can't go
Okay, we'll always get
How many of those Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario?
Yeah, I think I said something before, but from my perspective, it's like, I don't see why you would do it. No, it's just true.
Hi, my name is Josh. Libby, you're on YouTube right now.
Yes, you are.
Well, they're right there. It's that thing. Libby, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, so once you get through.
Oh, is that us? Yep. I saw that guy. That's what too.
See you guys right there?
Oh.
You're being recorded. Anyway, I'm gonna turn that part off.
The slides that you
Can you make it committed
well, it's kind of, they want to change it so you can get.
I just don't want to subscribe. I'm on YouTube already.
So am I.
How are you?
I have a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
I actually have 3 YouTube
No one has
channels.
actually seen your face though.
The first one, actually, I say I'm gonna do a vlog and I like just put it on it. Yeah.
Just keep in mind you're still being recorded.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't really matter, just.
Oh,
Stories
so
are like
you
a
know what
me.
you look like now.
You think you know, like, how
Oh, there's Karina.
I'm about to try to go.
Brandy.
It's like all the movies.
I was like, Harry.
So you may try to let me go.
Please stop jumping.
kind of.
That's great. If you want me to let's use again. Let's do it's just funny. Shorty buddy.
Over here.
Yeah.
He's telling me the video is not available. It's like, there's some areas that have it on TV too, like big parts of the US have it on television. In Canada, it's just here. Like hundreds of millions of people watch it. It's all over the world.
So I might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just trying to, I can't find the actual stream of it because it's not working. Where to watch. There we go.
Our climate is in crisis. The signs are all around us. The stakes are high.
It wasn't you, don't worry. I don't know what that was.
Well, 3. We lost one this year.
Why the heck is someone gaming? Hi, Justin, Angelica. Morning,
PUBG streaming.
So is that?
I have no idea. You know what she's a Twitch streamer. Get rid of her.
Playing.
PUBG.
Playing Fortnite.
Don't put Fortnite in PUBG. Copyright strike.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to, like, I had the live stream on for a second, and then it stopped. So I'm trying to find
Technology. No, you're not doing it right. Do it like this.
Signs all around us. The stakes are high. A healthy future.
Yeah.
I tried to burp and then all the air got stuck to every second.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then all the air just got stuck and it was like, right there.
You know, I just wanted to see if the live stream's showing me.
I know.
Yeah, you gotta see it. I just came over to see. Yeah, because it's not, you keep seeing this. Somebody else said they turned on the camera. Hey.
Hello, I'm Tyler.
1 hour, 1 minute, and 35 seconds.
The climate crisis. Signs over them.
Bill Nye, the science guy, will be on 24 hours of reality.
You just like, Are you going to be a climate leader when you get older too? Yeah, you are. Are you going to talk to Sean? He loves talking to my dad. He goes, oh, and then my dad goes, oh, yeah, actually, what do you think that? And then they talk about it.
Each of these are interconnected, and they actually have rippling effects way beyond their initial health impact, such as mental health conditions from prolonged stress and PTSD, and climate conditions sparking conflict and violence, as well as displacement of entire communities. Right now, let's look at the health impact of extreme weather with a short video hosted by Brian Cranston.
Our climate is in crisis. Our health is at stake. And it's not just you. The weather is getting warmer. Storms are getting stronger. Droughts are lasting longer. And it's all connected. The bottom line, our climate is changing. And as weather gets more extreme, it puts all of us in danger that is increasing by the day. Fossil fuel pollution has driven the change in our climate by trapping more of the sun's heat. Today, warming temperatures are creating more severe hurricanes, droughts, fires, and floods, all putting our health at risk. The heat is dangerous all by itself. Heat waves are getting hotter and lasting longer, breaking one record after another. When temperatures get this high, the weather can turn deadly, with outdoor workers, children, and the elderly at much higher risk of everything from heat stroke, heart attacks, up to death. More heat also means water evaporates faster from the ground, rivers, lakes, and oceans. When fields dry up and drought stretches on, farmers struggle to keep their crops alive and feed us all. Families, even entire communities, are forced to leave their homes, the ones they've had for generations, sometimes with deadly consequences. It goes on. Parched conditions also mean more frequent and ferocious wildfires, devouring homes and choking the air with smoke and toxic fumes that can spread for thousands of miles. All this heat starts a dangerous cycle. That's because warmer air holds more water vapor. So when the rain finally comes, it can strike with torrential force, unleashing lethal floods and landslides. Over the ocean, this extra energy and water vapor becomes fuel for hurricanes, turning everyday storms into powerful forces of destruction. Wind becomes more ferocious, rains get heavier and hit harder. The headlines show the results: widespread injuries, trauma, and even deaths. But what they don't show is the aftermath, how weeks and months without power can cripple communities and cost many, many more lives. Bottom line, it's a direct connection from burning fossil fuels to more fires, severe storms, and heat, making our world more dangerous every day. But today we can skip the dirty stuff and protect our health and power our lives with clean and affordable renewable energy. In a world where our health is important, the choice is clear. Protect our planet. Protect ourselves. Find out more at climaterealityproject.org.
And now joining us live via satellite from Vancouver, please welcome the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy for the British Columbia area, the Honourable George Heyman. Minister Heyman, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for the invitation, Sam. It's great to be here.
All right, let's start with Bill 51. I really want to know a little bit more about this. As Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy in British Columbia, now you introduced a new bill. It's called Bill 51. It's also known as the Environment Assessment Act. What is it actually designed to do?
Well, it's designed to do a whole lot of things, Sam, but I see the Environmental Assessment Act and climate change accountability as going hand in hand. What we wanted to do was ensure the public that they could have trust in our assessment of major projects, that we would do it in a transparent way, paying attention to both science and Indigenous knowledge. We also in British Columbia have pretty much all of the Indigenous nations, but a couple never signed treaties with the government, either previously or recently. So we want to ensure that they play a significant role in the decision-making process and gain benefits from projects. We also put in a number of key factors, including assessing project proposals against their impacts on our legislative greenhouse gas emission targets and our climate change strategy, as well as the impacts on future generations, and ensuring that the decision makers have to actually explain how they factored those decision points into the final decision on a project and the conditions that will govern that project. So in short, we want to ensure that we can have good projects approved in a timely manner, minimize discord with communities, with Indigenous peoples, and ensure that the public can trust the process, and we're accounting for climate change impacts as well as a host of other environmental and social impacts in our project assessments.
Well, it all sounds important. The latest figures, though, show that BC's carbon emissions are actually continuing to increase. So what can we do? What's our overall strategy to kind of take that in the opposite direction?
Well, since my government took office 16 months ago, we decided we had to return to a time when British Columbia actually began a program and some measures to tackle climate change. In 2008, British Columbia became the first jurisdiction in North America to put a price on carbon with a carbon tax. And our economy did well at the same time that the tax was rising. We had a government that was in office for about 6 years, and we saw in 4 of the 5 past years emissions rising instead of going down because the government ceased to pay attention to climate considerations. So we took office, we announced that we would begin raising the carbon tax gradually once again. We legislated new emission reduction targets to go with a 2050 target. And we also want to make sure that we have 2030 and 2040 targets. Later this week, we'll be announcing a strategy with key measures that have quantified emission reductions associated with them that will put us on a path to meet those targets. But we're making it part of a clean, diverse, modern economy strategy that will show British Columbians that there is hope. There's advantage not just in the future, but in the present. We're going to ensure that our existing resource industries minimize their carbon emissions, and that new technological advances through BC's clean tech industry can help with that, as well as reducing emissions overall. In BC, we have mostly clean energy. It's not like jurisdictions that are getting off coal. So we're making these emission reductions by being more efficient in transportation, more efficient in our industries, and more efficient in reducing energy use in buildings and making them net zero.
And it's so important to have those long-term targets, those 30, 40, 50-year targets ahead. Now, something that I read was about social housing, and this was so impressive to me. You recently announced that over the next 10 years, you're going to spend something like $1 billion to make social housing not only more comfortable, but more efficient. So what's the plan? How are you going to do all of that?
Well, the plan is to work with nonprofits, with community housing advocates as well as local municipalities in British Columbia to make these changes in social housing, which supports people in lower incomes in British Columbia. That's a 10-year plan. We built new social housing. We're going to renovate some of the old housing stock, make them more comfortable, make them more energy efficient. We also have additional plans to spend money on building new rentable housing for moderate and market-based income. All of this we want to do in an energy efficient manner. We want to introduce standards that will have new builds net zero ready within a matter of 14 or 15 years. But for people who live in social housing, they deserve to have good housing, they deserve to have affordable housing, they deserve comfortable housing, and all of us have an interest in reducing emissions through buildings, many of which are decades old and were built to low energy efficiency standards. So all of this is part of showing a commitment to reducing emissions while supporting our construction industry and BC citizens.
That whole thing just made my heart feel good just to hear you say it, because you're exactly right. These are the people that we should be helping. Now, as the former head of the Sierra Club in BC, and now as Minister of Environment and Climate Change, you've been at this really for a very long time. And so you can not only talk just to BC, but about Canada-wide. What are some of the biggest challenges?
It's Neyaashiinigmiing internet right now.
Did you see facing Canada as in its entirety?
Well, as I've said, there's a lot of jurisdictions in Canada that are dependent on fossil fuels for energy, but they're also dependent on the extraction of fossil fuels as a mainstay of their economy. We're seeing in other jurisdictions in Canada, as well as in the United States and other countries, a turning away from environmental action, from climate action, due to a belief that it will hurt the economy or that people will suffer. We're trying to change the channel on that in British Columbia. We're trying to show that we can make the transition. We can ensure that our existing resource industries are energy efficient and reduce their emissions, that we can build a more diverse and modern economy, and we can do it while providing good jobs for people, making their lives more affordable and making their lives more comfortable. I think we need to give people hope. And if we give people hope in a program that actually tackles climate change and reduces emissions while making our province and our communities better, we can show the rest of Canada that they can do it too. We can show the rest of the world that it can be done too. I would say the biggest challenge is a lack of inspiration, a lack of hope, and a belief that we have to choose between the environment and the future or today's economy. I believe that's a false dichotomy, and anything we can do to break down that false dichotomy, I think, serves us all.
I've loved the conversation. Thank you for your leadership, Minister Hammond. Thank you for being a part of our 24-hour reality broadcast. We appreciate your time. Now, if you've watched as much, you probably know television host and New York Times bestselling author Jonathan Scott as one half of the hit television show Property Brothers. But what you might not know is that he's a devoted climate activist. In previous years, like I said, he's joined us right here to host a 24-hour reality broadcast. And now he's created a documentary of his own entitled Jonathan Scott's Power Trip. Jonathan took a little time to share a bit about his childhood in Canada and how it sparked his lifelong passion for protecting the environment. Take a look.
When I was really young, I was a ranch kid. I was born and raised in Canada. There's a sense of pride in knowing that, we've been given this beautiful, beautiful country. And there is a responsibility that comes along with that. I remember some of the neighboring properties, they would burn off stumps and things like that. They would throw tires in there. And I remember seeing this bloom of black smoke go up into the air. And I thought to myself, there's no way that that's good for Mother Nature. And I remember being a little mini nerd and telling all my friends about all the environmentally responsible things we'd have to do. And kids from the city, they'd come out of the farm, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so lush, it's so green. I'm like, yeah, don't ruin that. When you're out in the country and you actually experience the beauty and the nature, you breathe in that fresh air and then you value it. My dad always taught us, we're going to do things that are good for the family, but at the same time, we need to find ways to do it that are not going to damage the environment. So the film that I wrote about renewable energy, it sparked from that passion I had as a kid, where I do want to have the sense of responsibility and work their lives are going to get. My film is about the real human story, people who are affected by the energy battle. In Canada, I love that there's always been this sense of urgency to make sure we're moving down a path of something that is going to be better for the environment. We do have a very strong oil and gas presence in Canada, and that's not going to go away. There's going to be a transition to cleaner fuels, especially on a utility scale. But Canada has been a leader for other countries in what that direction should be. What are the commitments we want to make? What are the targets that we can realistically hit and still foster economic growth? More so, I think, than a lot of other countries, Canadians are willing to look across the aisle and are willing to say, okay, what can we do that is going to keep moving us forward, keep us as a leader, but also do something socially responsible. We have the technology already to power ourselves with renewable energy, and the majority of people in the country want to move in that direction. We are known in the international landscape as being socially progressive, especially when it comes to something as important as the environment. We have this beautiful landscape. Let's keep it beautiful.
Now, each year, this broadcast, 24 Hours of Reality, brings the entire world together for one full day to talk about the reality of the climate crisis and actually how we can solve it. So today, you can become a citizen producer of this very live broadcast and have your name appear right in the closing credits with everyone else that works here. Don't miss your chance to support this world-changing broadcast. Visit 24hoursofreality.org/donate and learn how. Or if you're watching us on Facebook, and so many people are, you can just use the hashtag #IFightForClimate. Hashtag #IFightForClimate to get started. Now, you know our next guest. I'm a huge fan. As the science guy, please welcome science educator, mechanical engineer, New York Times best-selling author. Bill, this is going to take me an hour to get through all this. And the host of the Emmy-nominated Bill Nye Saves the World on Netflix. Please welcome Bill Nye. Bill, it's so nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
All right, so let's get started with all this. So we all know you as the guy who made science fun.
Science is fun, people. What's more fun than science?
So, should I congratulate you on the book first? Climate change is the great test of our ability to harness critical thinking. So far, we're pretty much flunking that course.
That's true. You're reading from what we like to call my latest book. But the first kids book I wrote was in 1993, which was in the 20th century. And in there is a demonstration about greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah.
And we haven't done a doggone thing. So, but we can, if we just get to work right now, we can address this issue and save the world. I emphasize, the Earth's going to be here no matter what we do. We want to save the Earth for us, humans.
Yeah. So your point is we might not be here on the Earth, but the Earth will be here?
That's right. Yeah. And so, of course, there are a few humans I wouldn't mind, of course, like so many people. But you guys, we can do this. The key, everybody, in my opinion, which, as you know, is correct, is we want to integrate the ideas of energy and climate. And when we talk about energy, we're talking about electricity. Electricity is magical. You can have this crazy, amazing studio with these lights and all these people, or make toast, all with electricity. And so, no, it's a really big idea. And I want us to get to work on it.
But let me just go back again to the quote from the book, the latest book. Because a lot of people do feel like we haven't made much progress. And I've even seen it on Twitter when you were saying, hey guys, come watch the show. And they're like, haven't we been talking about this for years? What do you say when people say that to you?
The longest journey starts with a single step. So let's go. Let's get it done. So hearkening to the relationship between the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
These were allied countries in World War II. And I talk about my parents all the time. They were both veterans of World War II. This week will be the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, which was affected the U.S., as you may recall. And so...
I mean, I wasn't there. But
no, nor was I, but everybody got together and resolved this global crisis in 5 years. So let's go. Let's do this. The things we got to do. We want to provide clean water. I'm pointing to the Earth map here. Clean water, reliable, renewably produced electricity, and access to the internet, or whatever the internet comes to be called, for everybody in the world. These are economic opportunities for all of us, especially the service providers. This is to say, as the economy
in the United States and Canada, or the United States especially, is no longer manufacturing, but service providing. This is going to provide the internet, clean water, electricity. Let's go.
Now, so you spent some time talking in Canada with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Yes.
And I know that you guys had a little back and forth a little bit, but did you come to some kind of consensus on
the guy's
converting to
working,
renewables?
and he is a politician. He's working the problem. So I believe you guys here are experts on this, but a Canadian citizen would be nominally the cleanest or smallest carbon footprint citizen in any developed country, with a couple exceptions like Denmark. But if you include the tar sands, then the Canadian citizen becomes the worst. And the tar sands don't get that much press, even in Canada. But man, there you go. There's images of it. It is, the scale of it is amazing.
Well, that's where I was going next, because you've spoken out about those tar sand areas in
This
Canada.
is not rocket surgery, people. Go take a look at Fort McMurray, Alberta, and you tell me, man, you scrape the forest off to get to this tar, which has the charming organic chemistry named asphaltene. It's, natural asphalt mixed with sand. And you cook it. The chemical engineers discovered develop ways to get oil burnable oil out of it, but the process is so carbon dioxide intensive. It's bad. It's bad.
And so it's useless, basically.
It's not useless. People burn all the time. Look, you guys, we all benefit from the carbon economy. We're all here. All this fabric, all these amazing lights, and the clothes we're wearing, everything depends so far on fossil fuels, but it's time to stop.
Now, we all know you as Bill Nye, the science guy, but you've talked about this before, and you kind of said that came about by accident. You want to tell me a little bit about
how the story of my life, which is
how all that happened? Because we have 24 hours.
So our story begins. So I was in college. I don't know if you heard this early part of the story, and my guy who had been my freshman roommate, Dave Lax. Dave went into material science, I went into mechanical engineering, but we still lived very near each other in College Town in Ithaca, New York, and he said, you got to come see this guy. So he had this innovation, Sam, his household with his roommates. They had cable television. Whoa, dude. And so it was Steve Martin at the boarding house. The boarding house is a nightclub in San Francisco. So this guy's just like you. Look at this. Well, a year and a half later, a new set of I got a job at Boeing. I was recruited. And I like to remind people, I work on 747s mostly. I was very well supervised. Don't worry. Everything's fine. Perfectly safe. Anyway, this new set of friends said, you got to enter the Steve Martin lookalike contest. And I did, and I won. I mean, due respect. I did not advance beyond Seattle, but after you do stand-up comedy, you get hooked on it. So I tried to write my own jokes, and I got a job on a comedy show in Seattle, the same show that Joel McHale came from eventually.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So one week, the story varies. It was either Eddie Vedder, who was going to, from Pearl Jam, or it was Geraldo Rivera. Somebody canceled, a guest canceled.
Yeah.
So we had 6 minutes to fill, which is a long time, 6 minutes. And so the host, Ross Schaefer, you may have crossed paths with him now and then. He went on to host the new Match Game.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he said, you could be like Bill Nye, the science guy or something. And then he got up and left, because he also had the #1 afternoon drive radio show, same guy. So I did, as you'd expect, I did the household uses of liquid nitrogen. Because we've all got liquid nitrogen around.
Just sitting around.
Sure you do. And so, the celery's limp, you make it crispy, you hit the onion, it sounds like breaking glass.
Yeah.
Then the payoff, I spent a lot of time with this. I was a young guy, I was a volunteer at the Pacific Science Center. I chew marshmallows that are frozen, roasted in liquid nitrogen. And steam comes out of your nose. It's very satisfying.
And not dangerous at all.
Oh, it's fine. You can burn your tongue, but I've done it hundreds of times, and you can see I'm fine. But that's where it started. But I was also, as a young guy, I was a big brother, United Way Big Brother. And it just became clear to me that the future, obviously, future is our young people. We had the Ford Pinto, the Chevy Vega. We abandoned teaching the metric system in the U.S. And I worked for this group of guys, they were all men, at this company which is now Honeywell. It got bought out. I left Boeing and went to a shipyard. It was just too low tech, and then I went back into aerospace. And they were just terrified of everything made in Japan.
Yeah.
And I just felt the U.S. was losing its edge. So technically. So I wanted to get young people excited about science. And so.
And you did.
Yeah,
I think you have.
What the hell, yeah, thank you. So why don't you people, you're all grown up now, get out there and save the flipping world, man. And so what we got to do, Sam, we're on this show, we are all believers, we are all concerned about this, we are all fighting the fight, but we've got to reach people on the other side of what you would call the political aisle who are still living in skepticism about the importance of climate change. And I just tell everybody, it's not just that it's getting warmer, it's getting warmer faster. That's the problem. So we got to clean water, renewable electricity, access to the internet. We got to rate and see if you have those three things, you can have agriculture and food.
You have a smarter population to deal with all of it.
Well, that comes when you have renewable electricity that provides access to the internet, probably in the developing world with low orbiting spacecraft, constllations of spacecraft.
Oh yeah, that's the new worldwide internet.
Well, that will hand the internet off the way we hand mobile phones from user to user. And then you can have education and you can raise the standard of living of girls and women. And then the world population will manageably decrease. The world will be better for everybody. Let's go. Let's get it done.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Ladies and gentlemen, he's his own show all the time.
Let's get not all the time.
Right here, right now, I'm thrilled to present to you the family band that took America's Got Talent by storm. You're going to love them. Please join me in welcoming We Three.
No raise my way, just you. Cause I'm very good, you have no reason to be, that's just how I feel. I'm just trying to be real. We should be turning sexual, leaving all damn day long. Getting a tattoo on my arm just because they told me not to. We should be turning one off, straight without going inside. But we know that I'm not the one to tell you you got to. Should have said let me make it what you want to do. You fucking my 3 days and now you're right. Should have take a break. You know my lifeline, it's only love. I got that panic to do stay. But I wouldn't live for even do it on me. Still no sleeping. The numbers and figures don't add up. But I'm not really sure you matter. Cause baby, that's what you ask me, baby. Still no sleeping. She will see you take it, break it, make it what you want to do. Till you find your mind, you can use it how you want. You know my lifeline, it's not you love. It's right, let's see you leave. I'm very free, we got no reason for breathing. It's how I feel. Don't feel the best until we let it forever. It's how I feel. I'm just trying to be real. I'm just trying to be real.
I told you, brother. Thank you, E3. Thank you for being here. All right, so our next guest is my brand new friend, Ariel Durante. She's a member of the Athabasca Chippewayan First Nation of Northern Alberta and is the Executive Director of Indigenous Climate Action. Now, she joins us now to discuss the impacts of the climate crisis on the health of Indigenous communities in Canada. So first of all, it's so nice to meet you. Welcome.
Nice to meet you too.
How did I do it? How did I do it? Yeah, come on. He warmed up the chair for you. Let's talk about your community and the health risks of the climate crisis and how it particularly affects them. Tell me what we're talking about.
You know, I'm really glad that Bill actually opened up because he talked about the Alberta tar sands. So my community at the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation is downstream from the Alberta tar sands. So, you know, we're feeling the direct impacts of extractivism and the extractive industries that are precipitating the climate crisis right now. But in addition to that, we're also experiencing the impacts of climate change in our communities through changing precipitation, the changing of migratory species, and all of this is disrupting our cultural and spiritual procurement that we've had with our lands and territories since time immemorial. And it's a real crisis for our communities because we're not just at the front lines of the climate crisis, we're often at the front lines of the very things that are precipitating the climate crisis, like extraction of Alberta's tar sands and other fossil fuels.
Yeah, and so I can't even imagine what it's like to be downstream all of that. So what's the answer? I mean, in a perfect world, what do we do?
You know, I think one of the most interesting things that we have to think about is that Indigenous peoples don't just live on the front lines. We're not just being impacted by things, but we actually house a lot of really important and critical information and knowledge about ecosystems that are becoming more and more critical to achieving climate stabilization. You know, the IPCC report that just came out a couple months ago stated that we have to protect and conserve the biodiversity that's left on this planet. What's really interesting is that 80% of the world's biodiversity exists within Indigenous lands and territories. Our communities aren't just feeling the impacts, but we actually have key solutions to addressing the climate crisis from a way that comes from ancestral knowledge. You know, our information and our knowledge systems about the lands and territories comes passed down from us to us through our previous generations. And it's absolutely critical that we tap into these knowledge systems in order to find real answers. Because as much as we need to protect the biodiversity of the environment, we have to think about the biodiversity of the human species.
And the people who are living there. Educate me a little bit. Help me understand when we're talking about Indigenous people in Canada and how they're impacted. How many communities, how many people are we talking about?
Indigenous people in Canada represent just under 5% of the population in the country. And so just like, you know, we're not a huge segment of the population, but we're over 630 Indigenous communities across the country, and we exist in some of the most biodiverse, rich regions of the country as well. Canada's boreal forest is one of the most important forests of the world, and our communities live in this beautiful, bountiful forest that is not just critical to our culture and identity, but critical to achieving climate stabilization. And you know, my community lives in the Peace Athabasca Delta. It's one of the last remaining freshwater deltas in the world. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and yet we're downstream from the largest industrial fossil fuel project in the world. We have two compounding and contradictory things happening, and it's the systems of extractivism and the continued attempts of colonization of our people that is pushing us further and further away, not just from that connection to our lands and territories, but our ability to hold on to those knowledge systems that are going to be critical for the human species survival.
Now, you've been pushing for solutions for the climate crisis that are centered in communities and Indigenous knowledge, just like you were just kind of talking about right there. Tell me more about what some of those answers might be, the ones that are handed down and passed down from generation to generation. What are some?
You know, I think one of the most interesting things when we talk about what are tangible solutions is these come from solutions that are grounded in knowledge, right? So these come from reconnecting to the land. We often think of the environment as something to protect as an externality, but as Indigenous people, we're taught that it's a part of who we are and our identity. And part of the solutions are attempting to get into a model of decolonization. And a lot of people are like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
Decolonization in its simplest form is a return of and connection to land. We as a species need to return to our connection to land and place. And when we feel that connection to land and place, we're more apt to protect it, preserve it, and care for it. We have to reconnect not just our bodies, but our spirits. You know, a lot of my elders and a lot of our people in our communities talk about the climate crisis not just being an environmental crisis, but a spiritual crisis.
Spiritual crisis as
Spiritual
well.
crisis.
You know, hearing you say it, it just rings so true to me, because if you're removed from the land, how do you care about what you're protecting?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think that's what we're really trying to achieve, is that Indigenous solutions aren't often really obvious. You know, our solutions aren't necessarily rooted in economic solutions and, you know, wind turbines and technology, but what they're rooted in is this connection to land. Reclaiming our cultures, our identities, and our languages are a part of those suite of solutions to address the crisis. And we can share our intimate knowledge and relationships outside of our communities and start to build a world of people that are more connected and decolonized and really pushing the agenda to really achieving that connection to land and place.
With so many headlines that aren't hopeful, what's a hopeful message that we can kind of end the conversation with?
You know, I think that humanity has been such a wonderful thing. You know, we've evolved and we've grown over the centuries, and we have this beautiful ability to continue to evolve. And a lot of people think of this crisis as scary and overwhelming, but it's actually an opportunity for us to not just reconnect with the land and place, but each other. Our solutions have to be diverse, just like humanity.
Ariel, I'm following you on social media. You're amazing. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, honestly, and sharing your story with us and the world tonight. We need to check in with social media, but I think there's a little something extra going on there. It's not just Caleb. Is it the vice president and Bill and I all together? Is that what's going on?
Sandy, we have some very special guests over here in the social media corner for 24 hours of reality. Now, Bill and Al, when we announced on social media that we were going to be asking some questions from some people on Twitter, social media blew up. They were freaking out about this moment. So why don't we check out some of the questions?
Okay.
So Edward asked, how do you handle discussing this topic with your own friends who do not believe in climate change?
Well, you can't not believe in it. So I don't believe in physics. No, it's whether you accept the consequences.
Yeah, but we've all had that experience.
Yes,
and,
we have.
It depends on the person. First of all, listen carefully. Show them the respect to listen and try to identify what part of it they're really hung up on, and then zero in on that and do your best. Be kind, be firm, be insistent, but be kind. And of course, there may be some folks that you may say, well, good seeing you. Let's go on to the next person.
It takes about 2 years, in my experience. People who are in denial about something important. Astrology is my favorite example. When you show the evidence that astrology is nothing, does not work, is bunk, the first time they double down. No, of course it is. I believe it. It's great. But after you show them a few times over the course of about 2 years, they come around. So have your expectations reasonable when you meet a climate change denying, contrarian, extreme skeptic, whatever you all want to call yourself. But the key, Al, Taylor, was we gotta reach people on the other side, people who are in the position to influence the economy.
Yeah, you know, I think that there's been a shift. And it's ongoing. I've seen 3 or 4 columns just in the last few weeks from conservatives and conservative Republicans who have said, hey, I'm convinced now. And, you know, often it's Mother Nature that does the convincing. Unfortunately, these extreme weather events are really having a big impact.
There are the extreme weather events are the events that climate scientists have predicted for, pick a number, 20 years, 25 years. So let's get to work, everybody. We're gonna have a new economy, and somebody's gonna get rich, and maybe it's you. So let's go.
What's next, Aaron?
Now, Teresa is asking, do you have any advice on how to get other people to help out with the climate crisis?
A lot of people have been coming forward and doing amazing things. And By the way, if you know somebody who is interested in learning about the crisis, learning about the solutions, learning how to be effective in bringing about change, ask them to sign up with climaterealityproject.org at one of our trainings. Our next big training is going to be in Atlanta, giant training focused on environmental justice. Come and
Come and go to Atlanta with us.
get the knowledge and the skills needed to really be effective.
What are the dates of it now?
March 14, 15, and 16.
I took one of the trainings and it changed my life. It was one of the greatest things I've ever done.
You used to be shorter.
I used to be a lot shorter, and now I grew a little bit.
Yes.
It was my ego, because I knew the facts. Let's check out one more question. Now, impoverished countries suffer the most when it comes to climate change due to the lack of resources and support. In her own country, Pakistan is considered ground zero for global warming consequences. Is it possible to focus more on these countries?
Yes, absolutely. And let's point out that places where low income and minority communities are located suffer more in developed countries also. But the low income countries are facing the bulk of this challenge for sure. By the way, I want to give a shout out to our amazing Climate Reality chapter in Pakistan. We have a lot of climate reality leaders there. They're doing a wonderful job. Solar has really taken off in Pakistan also. But yes, we need to focus on this. And you know, there is a refugee crisis in the world, more refugees now than at any time since the immediate aftermath of World War II. And a big part of it is because of regions that are really affected by the climate crisis, including in South Asia, including in North Africa and the Middle East, included in Central America, by the way. And that is yet another reason why wealthy countries should be focused on helping to save the places where people live, because they don't really want to move unless they're forced out by drought and failed harvests and the rest.
So if you're out there and you're an engineer, here's what we need. We, through the magical nature of fossil fuels, we have developed an electrical grid that depends on concentrated electricity generation. But in the future, it's going to be distributed electricity generation with solar panels and solar and wind. So what we need is to have an electrical grid that's flexible, that can move the electricity around. And Pakistan is a perfect example of where we could set up these new technology electrical grids. Because we don't have to undo what's already there. So if you're out there, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, let's go. Let's get her done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Bill Nye. And you can join the conversation on social media by using hashtag 24 Hours of Reality on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you soon.
Turn it up loud.
I love that. We're answering your questions live. I think that's the first time we did that. Over the last hour, we've spent time getting to know some of the health challenges faced by you, the people in Canada, and we've explored the many ways that people are taking action to solve the climate crisis and create a healthier and more sustainable future, really, for all of us. So remember, you're the most powerful advocate for your very own health. As we've seen, we stand at a crucial moment right now in the climate crisis. Today, here, as leaders of the world gather in Poland to once again renew their commitments, it's more important than ever that we urge them to take the strongest possible action required to ensure a healthy future for us all. Go to 24hoursofreality.org where you can share the news and insist upon urgent action now. Or if you're in the United States, it's actually even easier. You can just text climate to 40649. It's climate to 40649. You can get all started there. When we protect our planet, we actually protect ourselves. And now, I'm so excited to present an exclusive performance from Gdansk, Poland. Please enjoy Sting and Shaggy right now.
Hi, I'm Sting. Hi, I'm Shaggy. And we're honored to be a part of this year's 24 Hours of Reality. No matter where you live, the climate crisis affects you. Today, we understand the stakes are higher than ever. It's up to us all to stay aware and stay active. Together, we can build a healthy environment for everyone around the world. Join us at 24hoursofreality.org and let the world know that we demand continued climate action.
When we protect our planet, protect ourselves and our children. Tonight we're going to do something special. What I want you to do, I want you to take your lighters out, everybody, and I want you to, here's my lighter at. Put on your lights. Put them on. We're going to do something really special. Are you ready?
If blood will flow, when flesh and steel are one, dying in the color of the evening sun, tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away. Something our mind will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch our lifetime's arguments, that nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath the hungry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall, like tears from the storm, like tears from the storm. On and on the rain will sing how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
Ice cold as a heart for protection. Act as a shield to avoid a rejection. Sometimes we ain't that we able to feel. We acting all super, we ain't made of steel. Read through your avenue, find tears of joy. Give thanks for the blessings that you have enjoyed. Beautiful flower. In this concrete garden, fragile and hard, but we're still so hard. To that.
On the rain will fall, like tears from the star, like tears from the star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. Like tears from the star, like tears from the star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, 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 how fragile we are.
So close.
Our climate is in crisis. The signs are all around us. The stakes are high. A healthy future hangs in the balance. Join us for a journey around the globe.
Okay, so we have one more quick call in. So Asif Iqbal is going to call in from Pakistan. He's been waiting on Facebook to be able to, he's all excited about calling us and telling us about his solar project for girls' school. And then I don't know if anybody wants to say anything quick before we go, and we can say hi from the watch party. And we can post it up, and they may end up showing it later on the broadcast somewhere. So I'm going to bring him in. I just have to get his email address again. It's just on. Can you do it? Yep. And I'll go a little bit first.
A safe drive home.
Drive home.
The road's all done.
I'll stay with you.
Must be the middle of the world.
Okay. Did you send it? Yep. Managing all the tax. Most people watch parties aren't doing all of this stuff. They're just watching. I think he's got, it's up. Hey. Possibly. Hello? Says he's there. May or may not be there. Is the right arrow thing doing? What? No. I can inject. But that's it. Can you do present to everyone? Yeah, but I can't do anything, but if I could see what it does. I don't know what that did, but yeah, sure. Looks good. He is on the other side of the phone, so. True. All things considered,
For the internet here, I feel like it's 10 out of 10.
I did a little too.
Yeah, it started today and it goes in a different country every hour for the next.
24 hours straight until they do this so that was Canada's hour. So that's why we had somebody from BC. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Close Cherry. Oh, it's real promising. No audio still. Can you hear us?
Hello?
That's what I do. We just do contemporary dances.
Everybody's turn. How do you feel?
want to be one of that seat.
Nice photo anyway.
He can hear us.
Okay, that's
So you know.
We just can't hear it.
Wow, geez, that was expected.
Oh,
Oh,
that's just us. He just left.
I go excited for a second.
No, it's just us.
She could go dancing.
Is he gonna try to re-enter it?
I don't know. Do you want to try inviting me again?
Well, sure. I said
Or can you send him the link that's down there?
No, but that'll just make him view it, I think. I don't think that actually makes him join it. So I can totally try.
Oh.
Okay, wait. Anything?
I just told him here.
Is that on?
Hold on.
Hey.
Hello.
I think this might not be. Is this on?
It kind of looks like I'm having a one-on-one.
Let's unplug this.
You can hear us. Let's all move over here.
Let's try this. Now there's no audio. Hold on.
Back again at times.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello.
We either want to see you or hear you. It doesn't want to do both. But we can hear you now.
Hello.
Oh, now he's muted. He's muted now. You've muted on your side, I think. Because we didn't mute you, but it looks muted.
Yeah. Should I do a sign?
How do I?
Okay, there.
How do I unmute him now? Oh no. Oh no. The video's back with no audio. Hold on. Oh no.
Can you hit the one up there?
No, that's just.
Is there not a way to send me a message?
Hold on. Okay, wait. Hold on.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning there.
Oh,
good morning. Yeah.
Oh.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Hello.
Hi.
Good
morning.
Hello. Well, thanks God, we can talk to each other. So can you hear me clearly?
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yes. Still. Victoria, Corina, am I ready to talk?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and good morning from Islamabad. It's morning here. So I'm very excited to be part of this watch party. My name is Asif Iqbal. I'm from Islamabad, Pakistan, and I was trained by climate reality by Al Gore back in 2009 in Melbourne. That was my very first training. I'm also a mentor in a climate reality project representing Pakistan. So today I'm going to talk about our campaign. We call it Solar Power Schools for Girls in Pakistan. So before I talk about this campaign, I would like to give you a little bit of context that why we started this campaign. So if I talk about summers in Pakistan, it has become kind of normal that in many places our temperature in summer reach 40 degrees Celsius. It has become kind of normal. And we have the record of 53.5 degrees Celsius in Pakistan. This is the hottest one. And one of the impact of climate change in Pakistan is that we are having a number of heat waves, frequent heat waves. And the severe one was the 2015 heat wave in Karachi, in which more than 2,000 people died. So if we talk about schools in Pakistan, particularly for the girls' schools, unfortunately, about 48% of schools, girls' schools in Pakistan have no electricity. Either they are not connected to the national grids, or they have the electricity problem. So it's not just the electricity issue for girls' education, but also access of girls in many rural areas in Pakistan. Because one of the problems that we have here in the rural Pakistan is that if the girls have no school at local level, parents don't encourage them to go far to get education. So this is not something really easy for girls to get education, especially in the rural areas where there is no local school for girls. So that's why our small team of volunteers, in fact, started our campaign, Solar Power School for Girls in Pakistan. And how it works, it's in fact pretty easy. We launch fundraising appeal on different mediums like GoFundMe, and then we do the outreach. We outreach through the help of our volunteers, our friends, and we put an appeal on different fundraising campaigns, and then we invite friends and request them to donate for us for the in the fundraising, so that we can meet our fundraising target for each school. Basically, we have the target to equip at least 30 schools in Pakistan, girls' school in Pakistan, with the solar power. So once we reach the fundraising target, for example, for one school, we have the fundraising target of $1,000. So once we reach that target, we communicate and coordinate with some local organization, for example, local NGOs or school management committee, and then we identify a school, a girls' school, which needs a solar system or in which the girls have electricity issue. And then arrangement that we have done, we finally install a simple solar system. So far in Pakistan, we have piloted one school, and it's a kind of celebration for us that right now over 100 girls have access to solar powered classrooms. This is something really big achievement for us, and we are so much thankful to all the friends in Pakistan and in different countries who supported us to establish our first ever solar power school in Pakistan. And now we are in fact working on our second project, and we have already started fundraising for it. And why it's very important for us in Pakistan, if I talk about our very first project, when we were going to install our solar system in that school, it's a rural area. It's a bit far here from Islamabad. So when we were going to install solar system, that day we came to know that this school was constructed for many years, but it was never connected to the national grid. So the girls who were studying here, when we installed the solar panel, it was kind of a excitement for everyone, the students and the teachers, that they are going to have electricity for the first time in their school. So, although it was a very simple solar system, but it now provides an uninterrupted electricity to the students. Right now in Pakistan, it's a winter, but it still works in winter because in winter, now the girls are able to just close their rooms, the doors, and they have a bright light within the classrooms. So before, in the winter, when there was no electricity, they have to sit in an open or kind of to open the doors, and it was very difficult to sit in a cold morning in the schools. So this system is not going to help in the summer, but also in the winter. So this is our campaign, and I'm very thankful to Victoria, Corina, and all the friends right now in the watch party. I would request you all to join us in this campaign. And one of the most important requests that I would have for all of you would be to share this message. Join us through sharing the spreading the word. You can help us talk campaign, and if you think that there would be certain organizations which can really help in these kinds of campaigns, do let us know and share the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for calling in, Asif. You can see me, right? Yeah, we're just wrapping up our watch party here. We had a number of traditional ceremonies here. Here it's winter where we have snow on the ground outside. It's very cold.
White stuff.
But there's a sacred fire happening outside with a few of the people here, trying to ground us in spirituality around protecting Mother Earth too. So if we can ever do this again for you, like say one of your schools would like people to call in, let us know, because we could try to have some people to call back and talk about what's happening with climate change in different places. So if there's any time that you'd like to be able to do that with us, just let us know and we can see what we can do. But it's really nice. We appreciate you taking the time and the energy to do this with us. And so everybody want to say
thank you.
Miigwech from Neyaashiinigmiing.
Thank you. And I would like to congratulate and thanks everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the watch party that you just had. And I hope, just like I'm watching rest of some segments, you would also continue enjoying the 24 Hours of Reality. So thank you everyone once again.
Good night. Thanks. Good night.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you trying to leave the car?
No, how do I take them off?
You left.
Okay, good. It wasn't that we're staying till the end?
Very much so. That's cool.
Did we want to say one message from here more? I can take a video and then post it up there. Sure. Say hi, we're here in Neyaashiinigmiing. Just finished up a watch party. We loved the hour. You know what I mean? Like something like that.
Climate reality watch party.
Yeah, whatever you like.
Okay, you guys come to this.
Josh is like, I've already done a video.
Hold on.
You gonna get in there too?
I know, you're so much
All right, so who wants to say something? Who'd be the person saying something? And then
to say,
whatever, we're here in Neyaashiinigmiing at a watch party. We just finished something good. And then at the end, you want to say something.
Okay. I'll try.
Okay.
Ani Bojo, we're here from Neyaashiinigmiing, just finished up our watch party and wanted to give a shout out and thank everyone for participating. I was like, give me an ending. My brain is now mush. It went off at 11. Okay, what should I say at the end? We hope you enjoy Mother Earth.
Mother Earth.
Yeah, to Mother Earth, that's it? Okay.
And then do you guys all want to say something at the end after she finishes? You know what I mean, together? You were saying something like
Mother Earth.
Okay, so when I say we just finished up our watch party, just say thank you, Mother Earth. Okay, and then we'll end it there.
Okay.
Because don't make me strangling for words.
Okay, you ready?
Ani Bojo. Okay, 3 minutes of time. These guys want to go. Last chance. Okay. Ani Bojo from Neyaashiinigmiing. We just finished up our watch party. We just wanted to give a thank you to Mother Earth. I was like,
I missed
I'm just tweeting a second thing.
You also might want to say, like, we're in Ontario, Canada, like, because it's international.
I don't forget that.
You know what I mean? Like, if you can say,
Somebody's watching us. I'll be watching
you guys ready? Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go.
Ani Bojo, we're here in Neyaashiinigmiing, Ontario, Canada. Just finished up our watch party a few minutes ago, and we just wanted to say hello and thank you, Mother. Okay, that's all you're getting out of me.
That was awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
So with this, how do we, should we say good night to these guys, to everyone who's watching?
Good night.
Say thank you for tuning in.
Good night. You look so beautiful. No.
You can stop broadcasting.
It makes no one.
Don't
cover that people are on too.